Bro's first apocalypse run was a complete fucking disaster. Got betrayed by his girlfriend, friends got slaughtered, safe zone got hijacked, and bro got fed to zombies. But then, Apocalypse said, clock back in. He woke up 1 month before the apocalypse. Same world, same snake, same bastards. Except this time, bro awakened the most broken system imaginable, and this thing was basically handing out loot boxes, like Christmas came early, enhancement potions, survival gear, broken abilities, free loot for a man who already knew exactly how fucked the world was about to get. While everyone else was still clueless, our boy was already stacking supplies, building a fortress, and powering himself up, because last time, he was zombie food. This time, he's the one who's ready, with a whole damn arsenal of loot boxes. Back to early art. Inside an abandoned warehouse, Xiaoyong was literally hanging by a thread. Below him, a pack of zombies waited for their next meal, and unfortunately, he was today's special. As if that wasn't bad enough, Xiaoyong's shitty ex happily revealed that she'd already killed every single one of his friends. Hearing that, Xiaoyong could only look back at everything he'd done. He realized his own mistakes had cost the lives of the people who trusted him the most, and swore that one day she'd die a painful death. Too bad promises don't mean much when you're dangling over a zombie pit. The gold digger simply clung to her sugar daddy and started whining about her feelings getting hurt. Somehow, she still found a way to play the victim. Watching the whole thing, the fat bastard decided the show had gone on long enough. Before Xiaoyong met his end, he even thanked him for kindly leaving behind enough supplies to keep their group fed for months. Moments later, Xiaoyong lost his grip and plunged straight into the cage below. The freaks wasted absolutely no time. They instantly swarmed him, tearing into his flesh while he struggled helplessly beneath them. Even as his screams echoed through the warehouse, Xiaoyong roared one final vow. If Truck-kun ever blessed him with a second chance, Kijin and Susheng would pay for everything they had done. Apparently, the regression gods were listening, because in the very next scene our boy opened his eyes back in the past. The first thing waiting for him was Kijin. The gold digger immediately started barking about why her name wasn't on his property. Xiaoyong completely ignored her yapping and focused on the world around him instead. It didn't take him long to realize he had regressed to a time just before the apocalypse turned the world upside down. The memories of his previous life came flooding back, how his family's inheritance was destroyed, and how all of his wealth disappeared because of her. Honestly, calling her a walking apocalypse doesn't even feel unfair. Back in his previous life, a mysterious virus suddenly spread across the world, turning ordinary people into zombies that hunted down anyone still breathing. Thanks to his reliable friends and excellent connections, Xiaoyong successfully built a safe zone where survivors could stay alive. Everything was running smoothly until one day, that backstabbing parasite showed up looking for shelter. She pretended to be helpless, lost, and completely harmless. Feeling sorry for her, Xiaoyong welcomed her inside without thinking twice. That single act of kindness became the biggest mistake of his life. After earning his trust, she quietly brought her own people into the safe zone, and everything eventually fell apart from there. Looking at her now while she shamelessly demanded money again was all the reminder Xiaoyong needed. He wanted to strangle her on the spot, but he knew rushing things would only ruin everything. So instead, he shoved her outside and slammed the door right in her face. Kijin was left standing there completely confused. The same guy she'd been treating like her personal ATM had finally stopped approving withdrawals. Back inside, Xiaoyong checked the calendar and confirmed he had exactly 1 month before the apocalypse arrived. Just then, a strange interface appeared before him as the apocalypse system activated. His first objective was simple: own a piece of land and prepare enough supplies to survive for an entire year. Completing the mission would reward him with 10 points that could be exchanged in the system store. Not a bad deal for simply preparing before everyone else. Xiaoyong immediately opened the store and found only 3 available items: an enhancement potion, a survival kit, and a protagonist supply box, each costing a different number of points. Even with only 3 choices, he was already far ahead of where he'd been in his previous life. Looking around his apartment, Xiaoyong remembered just how miserable he'd been back then. He skipped meals, pinched every penny, and practically starved himself just to save money for Kijin's dowry. Imagine bankrupting yourself for someone who was planning to stab you in the back anyway. Not this time. He grabbed his phone and ordered himself a proper meal because once the apocalypse started, food like this would become a luxury. Later that night, Xiaoyong happily admired the expensive takeout sitting in front of him before digging in. The food tasted so good it almost felt illegal. For a second, you'd think one bite unlocked a hidden cultivation realm. Sadly, it was just really good pork. Either way, our boy wasn't complaining. He kept eating like he'd been waiting his whole life for this meal. And just as he was enjoying every bite, his phone suddenly started blowing up. Xiaoyong picked up the phone and saw it was Kijin's best friend Shuya. Staying true to the toxic best friend stereotype, she immediately started running her mouth, demanding to know why he had kicked his girlfriend out. She kept yapping until Xiaoyong got fed up and simply hung up on her. He had much bigger things to worry about. Right now, his priority was completing the apocalypse system's mission by securing a piece of land. He needed somewhere that could be turned into a fortress, was easy to defend, and had access to both fresh water water and nearby forest. The next day, Xiaoyong headed straight to a real estate company to make it happen. A consultant named Xiao Ning politely greeted him and asked whether he was looking to buy or rent a property. Before he could answer, their conversation was interrupted by her superior. Manager Jay marched over, shoved Xiao Ning aside, and ordered her to stop wasting time at the front desk and get back to handling bottom-tier work instead. The guy didn't even let her finish helping a customer. Then he looked Xiaoyong up and down and immediately decided the man in front of him was broke. Xiaoyong wasn't about to let that slide and called him out for the disrespect. Instead of backing off, the corporate douchebag doubled down, claiming someone like Xiaoyong probably couldn't even afford a toilet, so there was no point taking him seriously. Wrong customer, buddy. Xiaoyong calmly pulled out his American Express card and declared he wasn't there to buy a house, he was there to buy land. That single sentence stunned everyone around them. Suddenly, the customer manager Jay had written off looked a whole lot more valuable. Xiao Ning quickly invited Xiaoyong to continue the discussion properly, but manager Jay still refused to believe him. In his mind, Xiaoyong was just another loudmouth pretending to have money. Once they sat down, Xiao Ning presented several available properties, but Xiaoyong wasn't interested in browsing random listings. He gave her his exact requirements instead. The land had to be near mountains, have a reliable source of fresh running water, include convenient transportation, and preferably already contain either a factory or a large house. Hearing those conditions, Xiao Ning carefully thought through the available options. Before she could answer, manager Jay jumped in with his own recommendation, clearly hoping to embarrass Xiaoyong. He mentioned a plot in the East District, but it came with unfinished factories and an abandoned project that nobody wanted to touch. That's exactly why Xiao Ning hadn't recommended it in the first place. Manager Jay simply assumed Xiaoyong was listing impossible requirements because he never planned on buying anything anyway. Xiaoyong ignored the sarcasm and asked a simple question. Did the East District plot actually meet every requirement he listed? Xiao Ning admitted that it did, but reminded him about the unfinished factories and the developer walking away from the project. After checking the information himself, Xiaoyong quickly realized the property was actually perfect. It was easy to defend, already surrounded by barbed wire fencing, difficult for enemies to approach, and the unfinished factories would only make it more useful later. Without wasting another second, he agreed to purchase the land and sign the contract. Xiao Ning politely accepted, although she couldn't hide how shocked she was that someone was willingly buying a property everyone else avoided. Xiaoyong couldn't have cared less. He simply wanted the paperwork finished so someone could shove it right in Manager Jay's face. The very next scene was pure comedy. Manager Jay stared at the payment in complete disbelief, wondering who in their right mind would leave such a massive deposit for a plot filled with abandoned factories. Xiaoyong walked over with perfect timing and reminded him about their little bet. Since the purchase was real, Manager Jay now had to keep his end of the deal and eat his own words. As Xiaoyong walked away, even the other customers started laughing at the manager, pulling out their phones to record his embarrassment while waiting to see how he'd get himself out of this one. With the land finally secured, Xiaoyong completed the first mission from the Apocalypse system using the money he had originally saved for Kuai Jin's dowry. Now only one objective remained, stockpiling enough resources to survive an entire year before the apocalypse arrived. As Xiaoyong walked away from the real estate company, Xu Shang happened to spot him and couldn't help wondering what he was doing there. A second later, his attention shifted to the absolute circus happening nearby. Manager Jie was down on his knees while a crowd surrounded him, force-feeding him during a live stream. Talk about a career-ending day. The scene then shifted to Kui Jin, who suddenly received a call from Xu Shang. He immediately told her that Xiaoyong had just bought a piece of land. That was all it took to set her off. Her first question wasn't why he bought it, it was how he managed to buy it and where the money came from. Xu Shang explained that Xiaoyong had paid a massive deposit and guessed he probably used the money that was supposed to go toward her bride price. Hearing that, the gold digger instantly exploded, acting like Xiaoyong had spent money that already belonged to her. Xu Shang simply told her to stop guessing and ask Xiaoyong herself if she wanted answers. She kept complaining, but will gladly leave the rest of that rant where it belongs. Meanwhile, Xiaoyong was already thinking about his next problem. Buying the land only completed half the mission. Now he needed enough money to stockpile a year's worth of supplies while also turning the property into a fortress. His train of thought was interrupted by someone aggressively banging on his door. For a second it sounded serious. Turns out it was just Dumb and Dumber standing outside, both furious over how Xiaoyong had supposedly spent Qi Jin's money. Completely confused, Xiaoyong opened the door, only for Qi Jin to immediately accuse him of using her money to buy the land. She didn't stop there either. She shamelessly claimed the property belonged to her as well. The accusation was so ridiculous that Xiao Yong didn't even bother arguing first. He slapped a stack of cash against her shoulder and reminded her that he had never spent a single cent of her money. Then he dropped an even bigger bomb by exposing her secret relationship with Xu Sheng. Kuai Jin was completely caught off guard. Shuya immediately jumped in, pretending everything was just a misunderstanding between a couple. But Xiao Yong wasn't buying a single word. He called Kijin out for cheating while stringing him along besides his sugar daddy, then slammed the door in both of their faces and told them to get lost. Instead of feeling guilty after getting exposed, Kijin's biggest concern was figuring out how Xiao Yong had discovered her secret. That pretty much told you everything about her priorities. Even Shuya looked surprised because she hadn't expected the relationship to be exposed either. She was also disgusted that Kijin had chosen an old bastard like Zhang Susheng. After realizing they had absolutely no leverage left against Xiao Yong, the two decided to leave and think of another plan. That's when Shuya's true colors started showing. The snake had been waiting for an opportunity this whole time. Seeing Xiao Yong and Kuai Jin fall apart only made her think she now had a chance to steal him for herself. Forget loyal best friend, she was already planning her next move. Back at the unfinished factory, Xiao Yong met with the construction crew leader to discuss the renovation. The man explained that the project would require major upgrades along with a full set of defensive systems, meaning the work would naturally take time. Looking over the plans, even the crew leader couldn't help asking if Xiao Yong was preparing to fight God or something. Xiao Yong ignored the joke and simply ordered them to finish everything within 1 month. The crew leader immediately rejected the deadline, explaining that even with all their workers, finishing that quickly wasn't realistic. Of course, there was one way to make it happen: money. If Xiao Yong wanted the project rushed, it would cost at least 20 million. Xiao Yong didn't even flinch. Instead, he calmly asked if that amount was enough to guarantee the work would be finished. The crew leader added that they'd also need an upfront payment of 5 million before getting started. Xiao Yong accepted the terms without hesitation and promised the money would be transferred within a week as long as construction began immediately. The crew leader was practically speechless. He probably wasn't expecting someone his age to throw around that kind of money so casually. Xiao Yong then added one final condition. If anything went wrong on his end, they could simply take ownership of the land themselves to cover the losses. With that assurance, the deal was finalized. Right then, Shuya suddenly showed up, acting like they were old friends. She grabbed Xiao Yong's arm and casually asked what he was doing there. Seeing her instantly reminded Xiao Yong that she had also helped Kui Jin steal his family's property in his previous life. He planned to settle that score eventually, but not today. Instead, he asked why she was there. Shuya ignored the question and looked around the property before asking if this was the land he had bought and whether he planned to build a villa on it. Xiao Yong pulled his arm free and bluntly told her it was none of her business. That answer only irritated her even more. She couldn't believe he was treating her so coldly, even though she had already started catching feelings for him. Xiao Yong paid her no attention and continued discussing the project, instructing the construction crew to expand the space around the main gate. Shuya could only frown. She already knew Kuai Jin's relationship with Xiao Yong was falling apart, and now she was convinced she still had a chance to play her own cards and take both Xiao Yong and the land for herself. At this point, our boy really had a talent for attracting the worst women imaginable. Back at his apartment, Xiao Yong started figuring out how to scrape together enough money. He even used his apartment as collateral, but it still wasn't enough to cover the upfront payment. Right now, cash was his biggest problem. After thinking it through, he even considered selling the same apartment to multiple buyers. With the apocalypse only a month away, lawsuits were about to become everybody else's problem. Just as he was sorting things out, someone started pounding on his door while shouting for him to open up. The noisy old man turned out to be his neighbor, Grandpa Li, a wealthy landlord who already owned the first 2 floors of the building and had been eyeing Xiao Yong's apartment for a long time. In his previous life, Xiao Yong refused to sell because he planned to use the place as his future wedding home. Considering how that dream crashed and burned, he wasn't exactly attached to it anymore. Grandpa Li immediately started lecturing him, accusing Xiao Yong of wasting his nights out partying. Xiao Yong flat out denied the nonsense, but instead of arguing, he got straight to the point. He told Grandpa Li he was willing to sell the apartment. Hearing those words instantly changed the old man's attitude. Xiao Yong then added one condition. Since his new place wouldn't be ready for another 6 months, he wanted an upfront payment of 5 million so he could pay off the apartment loan first. It was a smart move, and if he repeated the same strategy with other buyers, he'd have plenty of cash to work with. Grandpa Li hesitated for a moment, and Xiao Yong was already ready to shut the door in his face. At the last second, the old man agreed, although he insisted on signing a proper contract so neither side could back out later. Xiao Yong had absolutely no problem with that. After all, once the apocalypse arrived, Grandpa Li wouldn't be around to worry about the paperwork anyway. Everything was finally falling into place. Between Grandpa Li's 5 million and the 3 million he had already arranged himself, Xiao Yong now had a total of 8 million to work with. Since he had successfully completed the first mission, he was finally able to claim his reward from the apocalypse system. With that out of the way, Xiao Yong immediately started raiding grocery stores. At this point, the shopping carts were working harder than most people. He kept filling one cart after another until he had 7 of them packed to the brim. The people around him could only stare, wondering if the guy had completely lost it. Some even figured he'd fallen for another fake apocalypse rumor. Xiao Yong couldn't care less what any of them thought. He finished gathering everything he needed and completed the system's second task. Now it was time to spend his reward points. Although increasing his own stats sounded tempting, Xiao Yong decided the protagonist's supply box offered much better value. Without hesitating, he spent every point on it. The reward turned out to be a glowing mystery box that revealed an incredibly useful space ring capable of storing items inside a static dimension. For Xiao Yong, this was practically a jackpot. His supplies would stay perfectly preserved without ever spoiling. Just when he thought gathering 1 year's worth of supplies was enough, the system casually raised the bar and assigned him an even crazier objective: stockpile enough resources for 10 years to earn more points. Around the same time, Xiao Yong's mountain of shopping finally attracted the attention of the supermarket manager, who called security to deal with what they assumed was another lunatic causing trouble. The security supervisor turned out to be Yang Tao. Back in school, Yang Tao had been one of the biggest bullies around and constantly targeted weaker students, including Xiao Yong, because he refused to follow orders. Years later, absolutely nothing had changed. Yang Tao immediately demanded that Xiao Yong return everything to the shelves instead of creating a scene. Xiao Yong simply smiled and pointed out that Yang Tao was still the same Captain Douchebag he remembered from school before calmly stating that he intended to buy every single item. Yang Tao didn't believe a word of it and demanded he pay immediately or deal with the consequences. About an hour later, 4 cashiers finally finished scanning everything Xiao Yong had piled up. The grand total came to nearly 57,000 yuan. Convinced Xiao Yong had been bluffing the whole time, Yang Tao confidently ordered him to swipe his card. Xiao Yong did exactly that without the slightest hesitation. Seconds later, the payment went through successfully. Yang Tao was left standing there completely speechless while every bit of confidence he'd been showing disappeared on the spot. Embarrassed, he turned around and prepared to leave with his men, but Xiao Yong wasn't letting him walk away that easily. He stopped Yang Tao and reminded him that he'd been treated with nothing but disrespect throughout the entire purchase. If the supermarket wasn't willing to give him an official apology, he would return every single item right then and there. Hearing that demand made Yang Tao's blood boil. In his eyes, Xiao Yong was deliberately pushing his luck and asking for trouble. Unfortunately for him, cameras were everywhere, and plenty of customers had already seen how he'd treated Xiao Yong. They immediately stepped in and told Yang Tao to apologize unless he wanted his attitude plastered all over the internet. Things couldn't have worked out better for Xiao Yong. He calmly reminded his old classmate that swallowing his pride for a simple apology wasn't going to kill him. In fact, if he apologized properly, Xiao Yong might even buy 10 times more. Yang Tao naturally thought he was bluffing, so Xiao Yong pulled out his card again and showed him the account balance. The moment Yang Tao saw over 7 million sitting in the account, his face completely changed. With nowhere left to hide, the former bully finally lowered his head and apologized for his behavior. Xiao Yong accepted it with a light pat on the head and reminded him that acting like a jerk for no reason never got anyone very far. As Xiao Yong prepared to leave, Yang Tao couldn't hold back his curiosity and asked what he needed such a ridiculous amount of supplies for. Xiao Yong brushed him off with the only answer he deserved, telling him it was none of his damn business because he had something big planned. That answer actually gave Yang Tao an idea. He mentioned that purchases on this scale would be much easier through a wholesaler. Xiao Yong immediately asked whether he knew any wholesale suppliers. Yang Tao nodded and brought up their old boss, Mr. Song, who now worked in the wholesale business. He even offered to contact him personally, because this was exactly kind of customer Mr. Song would want. Xiao Yong was honestly surprised that Yang Tao was still working under the same guy even after all these years. It made him wonder just how much money the two of them had made together. Not long after Yang Tao took him to meet Mr. Song, a car pulled up and stopped right in front of them before old Song stepped out like he owned the entire city. Hearing there was a major client waiting, he came over without wasting any time. Yang Tao reminded him that Xiao Yong used to be their classmate, but old Song couldn't remember him at first. After taking a closer look, recognition finally hit. Xiao Yong was the same kid who always refused to bow his head back in school and constantly stood up against their group. Rather than greeting him, old Song immediately mocked Xiao Yong's clothes, claiming they had to be fake. It didn't help that Xiao Yong casually admitted he didn't even know the brand name. Old Song instantly decided this wasn't a serious customer and figured Yang Tao has wasted his time. Frustrated, he literally kicked Yang Tao and bragged that he could judge whether someone was rich just by looking at them. Xiao Yong couldn't help firing back, sarcastically pointing out that old Song's aura wasn't impressive enough to scare anybody. especially not a clown who thought looking tough made him important. He grabbed Xiaoyong by the clothes, but Xiaoyong didn't back down and calmly repeated himself. Yang Tao tried to calm both sides down, only to get kicked again for interrupting. At this point, being Mr. Song's employee looked more dangerous than actual apocalypse. Furious, Mr. Song warned Xiaoyong that unless he bought a massive amount of goods, he won't leaving in one piece. Xiaoyong answered by quietly showing him his bank balance. The mood changed instantly. Mr. Song couldn't believe the amount of money sitting in front of him. Xiaoyong explained that he planned to place an order worth 5 million, while the first 1 million would simply be the deposit. Hearing those numbers, Mr. Song immediately became interested and asked what kind of products he wanted. Xiaoyong made it simple. Anything that could be eaten or drunk was included. Seeing such a massive order, Mr. Song immediately started thinking about making an easy profit by dumping nearly expired food onto his new customer. He took Xiaoyong into the warehouse and even threw in a 10% discount if he agreed to buy everything there. Xiaoyong ignored the sales pitch and inspected the goods himself. After checking one of the peanut bags, he immediately noticed that most of the stock was already approaching its expiration date, exposing Mr. Song's greedy little schemes on the spot. Mr. Song clearly hadn't expected Xiaoyong to know this much about wholesale goods. Seeing his little scheme exposed, he immediately sweetened the offer and bumped the discount up to 50% if Xiaoyong agreed to take the entire batch. Xiaoyong refused without hesitation. If he was spending 5 million on supplies, he wanted top-quality goods, not leftovers. That said, he wasn't completely uninterested in the expired stock. He simply had a different use for it. Since Mr. Song had already opened the door for negotiation, Xiaoyong made his own offer. He'd take every expired item in the warehouse, but he wouldn't pay until 1 month later. Mr. Song didn't really mind the payment delay, but he worried Xiaoyong would refuse the goods once they expired completely. To settle his concerns, Xiaoyong even offered to mortgage his own house as collateral. At this point, Mr. Song couldn't help wondering what kind of business needed expired food in bulk. Xiaoyong only gave him one small hint. In just a few days, even expired food would become a luxury. Those words sent a chill through Mr. Song, but Xiaoyong refused to explain any further. He simply finalized the deal and told him he'd send over the delivery address later. Right then, Xiaoyong received a phone call from someone interested in buying his apartment. With the warehouse deal settled, he left everything else to them. Watching him walk away, Yang Tao couldn't help wondering if they had somehow been the ones getting played instead. Even Mr. Song couldn't figure out how someone looked so ordinary was casually throwing millions without blinking. A little later, the buyer transferred a 400,000 yuan deposit for Xiaoyong's apartment and even accepted the condition that Xiaoyong would continue living there for another 3 months before moving out. At this point, Xiaoyong wasn't worried about what happened afterward. By then, the apocalypse would make contracts pretty meaningless. What surprised him more was how quickly the old man agreed without even inspecting the apartment first. Curious, Xiaoyong asked why he was in such a hurry. The old man explained that his granddaughter needed to transfer schools, so they were searching for a new home nearby. They liked the apartment and decided to make an offer immediately. Hearing that, Xiaoyong jokingly wondered if he should raise the price after learning how desperate they were. The poor old man immediately looked nervous, but Xiaoyong reassured him that he wasn't planning anything like that. The contract was signed, the deal was completed, and the grateful old man thanked Xiaoyong before preparing to leave. Watching him go, Xiaoyong couldn't help thinking it was a shame. Innocent people like the old man and his granddaughter had no idea what was coming, and most of them wouldn't survive once the apocalypse began. Before the man left, Xiaoyong stopped him one last time and asked for the address where they were currently staying. Soon afterward, Xiaoyong returned to the construction site to inspect the progress. The construction captain acknowledged receiving the first payment, but reminded him that the second installment would also be needed soon. Xiaoyong assured him the money was on its way before asking for an update. The captain reported that roughly 80% of the project had already been completed. The reinforced doors and defensive structures were installed, and even the warehouse had been cleaned and prepared for storage. Satisfied with the progress, Xiaoyong immediately contacted Mr. Song and instructed him to deliver all the supplies. Before long, truckloads of goods arrived and were carefully unloaded into the warehouse. Xiaoyong even paid each worker an extra 2,000 yuan for their labor. While everyone celebrated the unexpected bonus, Xiaoyong personally organized the supplies, sorting every category and making sure the perishable goods were stored properly. By evening, everything was finally in place. Looking over the warehouse, Xiaoyong had officially stockpiled 10 years' worth of supplies, earning another 20 system points. He opened the system store again and noticed a brand new reward box had appeared. The biggest advantage of the Apocalypse system was becoming obvious now. It allowed him to gain powerful abilities before the apocalypse even started. Without wasting time, Xiaoyong spent 10 points on the new mystery box. This time, he obtained an ability called Mind's Eye, which allowed him to sense hostility and malicious intent from other people. In a world where trusting the wrong person could get you killed, that ability was worth its weight in gold. As soon as he claimed the reward, the system issued his next mission. Armed to the teeth. His objective was simple: gather as many weapons as possible and prepare for the apocalypse. Conveniently enough, that was exactly what Xiao Yong had already planned to do. That night, Xiao Yong headed into the city's black market, weaving through crowds of shady dealers shouting about antiques and all kinds of questionable merchandise. Naturally, every scammer within a 50-mile radius seemed to be hanging around there, including Big Mac Attack himself. Xushang was busy arguing with a vendor over the price of a bracelet, and watching him happily buy fake jewelry only confirmed what Xiao Yong already knew. The guy was a scammer, and Kuai Jin was out there proudly wearing knockoff accessories without a clue. Ignoring the circus, Xiao Yong kept searching until one particular stall caught his attention. The owner specialized in melee weapons. Xiao Yong asked if he had anything worth buying. The vendor first recommended a knife sharpener and then suggested a baton if he wanted something solid but not bladed. Xiao Yong shook his head and made it clear he needed something much tougher. The shop owner assumed the kid was wasting his time until Xiao Yong casually transferred 200,000 yuan into his account. That instantly changed the conversation. Realizing this customer was serious, the vendor invited Xiao Yong into a private storage room. Inside, he brought out several homemade firearms priced around 2,000 yuan each, but admitted they weren't powerful enough to kill someone. Xiao Yong immediately turned them down. He wasn't preparing to fight people. He was preparing for zombies. The seller then showed him a replica revolver worth around 5,000 yuan, but Xiao Yong still wasn't impressed. After all, he'd already transferred 200,000 without blinking. That's when the seller realized something even crazier. The 200,000 wasn't the full payment. It was only 10% of the budget. Xiao Yong calmly explained that he intended to spend 2 million yuan on weapons. Hearing that number, the seller could only wonder what kind of life this guy was living. Without wasting another second, he decided to stop showing the cheap stuff. After making sure nobody was watching, he assured Xiao Yong he had connections to a supplier capable of delivering real high-quality weapons. The actual meeting would take place in a couple of days. As Xiao Yong walked back outside, he ran into Xushang again. The fat scammer assumed Xiao Yong had suddenly become wealthy by selling valuables on the black market. Xiao Yong couldn't care less about explaining himself. Instead, he decided this was the perfect chance to test his newly acquired mind's eye ability. He first looked at the weapon seller and confirmed there wasn't any hostility coming from him. Then he checked Xushang, and the results spoke for itself. Smirking, Xiao Yong fired back by telling Xushang that just like those fake bracelets, Kijin was another fake product he had happily taken home. That one landed hard. Xushang's face immediately twisted with anger. Watching the exchange, the weapon seller asked whether the two knew each other. Xiao Yong simply replied that it was better to think of Xushang as an enemy. Since Xiao Yong had already become a valuable customer, the seller immediately took his side and even offered to beat the old bastard up for causing trouble. Xiao Yong walked away satisfied while Xushang was left standing there looking ready to explode. Things only got worse for him moments later when several rough-looking men approached with batons, shoved him to the ground and beat him until he was covered in bruises. Instead of learning his lesson, Xushang only hated Xiao Yong even more and swore he'd get revenge someday. 2 days passed, and Xiao Yong finally received a truckload of weapons, successfully completing the system mission and earning an additional bonus reward. The reward turned out to be a superior physical enhancement potion that doubled the effectiveness of the normal version sold in the store. Xiao Yong wasted no time loading the injection and using it on himself. Almost immediately he felt the difference. His physical strength climbed from the average value of 5 points up to 7, giving him roughly 40% more raw strength than an ordinary person. After checking the system store, he found only 2 available items, the survival kit and another physical enhancement potion. Wanting to push his strength even further, Xiao Yong bought the potion and injected himself again. By the end, his physical stat reached 8 points, giving him roughly 60% greater strength than the average adult. Curious about the results, Xiao Yong grabbed a hardened metal rod and tested his new power. One kick was enough to bend the rod and leave a crack in the nearby wall. With strength like that, ordinary zombies weren't going to have a fun day. Satisfied with the test, Xiao Yong stored every crate of weapons inside his space ring, watching them disappear into the static dimension one after another. After looking over everything he had prepared, Xiao Yong realized the apocalypse was now only 2 days away. There were still a few loose ends he wanted to take care of, and one of them was the old man who had bought his apartment. Despite everything he'd suffered in his previous life, Xiao Yong hadn't lost his humanity. He decided to send the old man and his granddaughter enough supplies to improve their chances of surviving. After that, the rest would be up to them. In the next scene, Xiao Yong arrived at the old man's home. Just finding the place wasn't easy. The neighborhood looked worn down, and climbing the stairs made it obvious the old man had been struggling for quite some time. Before knocking, Xiao Yong decided to take care of the supplies first. Using his space ring, he materialized stacks of rations outside the apartment, then finally knocked on the door. The old man answered, already apologizing about the condition of the place, but froze the moment he saw Xiao Yong standing there surrounded by crates of supplies. Xiao Yong didn't waste time explaining, he simply told the old man to help move everything inside first. After all the crates were carried in, the old man couldn't help being impressed by Xiao Yong's stamina. Xiao Yong looked around the apartment and noticed it was actually fairly secure. Satisfied with what he saw, he lowered his voice and warned the old man not to tell anyone what he was about to hear. He urged him to use the supplies carefully because the world was about to change. While speaking, Xiao Yong's eyes landed on a framed photograph sitting nearby. The girl in the picture immediately caught his attention. To his surprise, it was Shen Xion, one of the companions he met during the apocalypse in his previous life. Wanting to make sure, he asked the old man if that was really her. The old man looked surprised that Xiao Yong already knew his granddaughter's name even though he had never mentioned it before. Xiao Yong immediately asked where she was now. The old man explained that she was still studying in her hometown while handling a school transfer. Hearing that brought back painful memories. In his previous life, Shen Xion carried deep regrets because her grandfather sacrificed his life to save her during the apocalypse. Knowing what was coming, Xiao Yong had no intention of letting history repeat itself. He immediately told the old man that he wouldn't be moving into the apartment after all. Those words nearly gave the poor man a heart attack, but Xiao Yong quickly calmed him down and explained the real reason. The apocalypse would begin tomorrow. Once it started, nowhere would truly be safe. He urged the old man to pick up his granddaughter first, and only after they reunited would they decide where to stay. Naturally, the old man struggled to believe such an unbelievable story. With no time left, Xiao Yong tried explaining it in the simplest way possible. A disaster was coming. Starvation would become the new normal, and survival would depend on preparation. Then, to prove he wasn't making things up, Xiao Yong activated his space ring and instantly absorbed both the furniture and every crate back into the storage space. The old man stood there speechless. Xiao Yong explained that he possessed special abilities and knew what the future held. If they wanted to survive, they needed to leave immediately and bring Shen Xion back. The next scene showed the two of them rushing toward her school by car. As soon as they arrived, Xiao Yong asked for her dormitory and they hurried inside to find her. Unfortunately, Shen Xion was already in trouble. A jealous girl was slapping her over some random guy who happened to have a crush on her. Shen Xion repeatedly insisted she had nothing to do with him, but the girl refused to listen and accused her of making excuses. She and her friends kept bullying Shen Xion simply because someone else liked her. Right then, Shen Xion's grandfather rushed over and demanded they let his granddaughter go. Instead of backing off, several teenage punks showed up and threatened the old man for interfering. Worried only about protecting his granddaughter, the old man charged in without thinking, even though he was completely outnumbered. One of the little thugs raised a baseball bat and prepared to smash it down on him. Before the swing could land, Xiao Yong stepped in and caught the attack with one hand. Looking at the guy, he mocked him for acting like some big-time gangster when he was really just another high school troublemaker. The punks tried talking tough, but Xiao Yong answered with actions instead. One kick sent the first idiot flying straight to the ground so hard that even his hairstyle looked different afterward. Watching their friend drop in one hit, the remaining two finally realized they weren't dealing with an ordinary guy. Even so, they still thought surrounding Xiao Yong would somehow help. Bad idea. The thug carrying the club tried attacking from Xiao Yong's blind side, but Xiao Yong easily ducked underneath the swing. Thanks to his enhanced body, his reactions had become much faster than before. Before the guy could recover, Xiao Yong grabbed him by the collar and slammed him into the ground, knocking him out instantly. Seeing both of his buddies folded in seconds, the group's leader quietly pulled out a knife and tried sneaking in for a stab from behind. Unfortunately for the last thug, Xiao Yong reacted first. He shifted his body and drove a brutal kick straight into the guy's upper thigh, dropping him to the ground in agony. One by one, every wannabe tough guy was taking a forced nap. With the boys dealt with, Xiao Yong turned his attention to the girl who had been bullying Shen Xion. He answered her earlier slap with one of his own, making it clear that equal rights came with equal consequences. The hit left her completely dazed. Then he grabbed the other girl by the hair and gave her a taste of the same treatment she had been dishing out. Finally, Xiao Yong placed a knife against the bully's neck, and the fear instantly drained the color from her face. A quick slash followed, sending her screaming in terror. For a split second, everyone thought Xiao Yong had actually killed her. Even Shen Xion froze in shock, but after taking a closer look, all he had done was give the girl a brand new haircut. Let's just say the barber got a little too enthusiastic. Furious, she screamed that she'd never forgive him. Xiao Yong couldn't care less. If anything, he joked that she'd lost a bit of unnecessary weight. Before leaving, he casually told her she'd understand what he meant in a few days. With that, he told Shen Xion it was time to go. She had no idea where they were headed, but she followed anyway. Once they were back in the car, Grandpa Li explained everything Xiao Yong had told him, describing the coming disaster as a massive famine. Shen Xion immediately thought her grandfather had fallen for another scam. Grandpa Li quickly insisted it wasn't anything like that. Watching the two of them bicker made Xiao Yong smile a little. At least in this life she still had moments like these. Xiao Yong then admitted that he was the one who had warned Grandpa Li in the first place. Since Shen Xion had never met him before in this timeline, he introduced himself properly. She thanked him for stepping in and helping her with the bullies earlier. Xiao Yong accepted the thanks but wasn't too concerned about those punks anymore. In a few days they would have much bigger problems than school fights. Shen Xion still couldn't understand what was really happening, so Xiao Yong explained that he only called it a famine because it was easier for her grandfather to accept. Hearing that made her think maybe things wouldn't be as terrible as they sounded. Xiao Yong immediately corrected her. It wasn't just a famine, it was an apocalypse. That single word wiped away whatever hope she had left. Xiao Yong explained that according to the latest reports, strange incidents should already be appearing across the country. Shen Xion quickly pulled out her phone and started checking the news. Video after video showed infected people behaving like rabid animals and attacking everyone around them. The more clips she watched, the more terrified she became. Looking at the footage, Xiao Yong knew his prediction had been right again. The apocalypse was almost here. He explained that by tomorrow a toxic smog would spread across multiple provinces, permanently changing every living creature caught inside it. A huge portion of the population would instantly become zombies, and anyone they killed would rise again as one of them, causing their numbers to grow even faster. At least Shen Xion already knew what zombies were supposed to be, but knowing about them and living through one was a completely different story. The whole situation still felt impossible for her to believe. Xiao Yong simply told her she'd understand soon enough. Within a week, the entire world would be thrown into chaos. For now, though, they had a much more immediate problem. Traffic had completely locked up the highway, and even the emergency lane was packed. Shen Xion started panicking, worried the zombies would find them while they were trapped there. Xiao Yong reassured her that the full outbreak hadn't started yet, so they weren't in immediate danger. Still, he admitted there was always a chance smaller incidents could happen before the main catastrophe. Almost as if to prove his point, a reckless driver suddenly forced his way toward the emergency lane and slammed directly into Xiao Yong's car. Xiao Yong wasn't about to let it slide. He blocked the driver from pushing through, forcing the other car to stop beside them. The man immediately rolled down his window and started hurling insults. Seeing the expensive Mercedes, Grandpa Li quietly suggested they ignore the spoiled rich jackass and move on. Xiao Yong had a different opinion. If the guy insisted on causing trouble, he didn't mind teaching him a lesson ahead of schedule. About an hour later, traffic finally started moving again. Just when everyone thought the headache was over, Shen Xion spotted the same Mercedes jackass from earlier speeding up behind them. Even Xiao Yong had to admire this guy's commitment to being obnoxious. The spoiled rich kid raced ahead, cut them off again, and made sure they saw him doing it. Grandpa Li immediately warned Xiao Yong not to sink to his level, but Xiao Yong had already stopped caring about people like this. With the apocalypse only hours away, consequences weren't exactly keeping him awake at night. Instead of arguing, he simply rammed the Mercedes, sending it spinning off the road before it crashed to the side. The furious trust fund baby jumped out and immediately called the traffic police, determined to have Xiao Yong arrested for daring to hit his precious car. Meanwhile, Xiao Yong and the others returned to the fortress he had spent so much time preparing. Grandpa Li couldn't hide his surprise after seeing the place for himself. Xiao Yong calmly told them that starting tomorrow their lives would change forever, so they should get a proper night's rest while they still could. The following morning, Xiao Yong was relaxing outside when Shen Xion walked over. She admitted it was the best sleep she'd had in a long time after dealing with endless classes. Xiao Yong then decided to show her around the fortress. As they walked through the compound, he explained that the outer walls were reinforced with concrete and the main gate was controlled remotely while being strong enough to withstand forced entry. He then laid down the most important rule of all. Without his permission, nobody was allowed inside the main fortress. Shen Xion immediately worried about future survivors who might arrive seeking help, asking whether they would simply leave them outside to die. Xiao Yong understood her concern and took them to another section of the property. There, he explained that people's true nature changed during an apocalypse. Kindness without caution could easily get everyone killed. To avoid abandoning innocent people completely, he had already prepared a separate buffer zone where survivors could receive temporary shelter without entering the fortress itself. Even after explaining that, Xiao Yong reminded them once again that nobody was ever allowed into the main base without his approval. After settling that issue, he led them into the food warehouse and showed them where all the supplies had been stored. Before finishing the tour, Xiao Yong quietly activated Mind's Eye and checked both Grandpa Li and Shen Xion. Seeing nothing but genuine trust from either of them, he finally felt reassured that he had chosen the right people. He then summoned several weapons from his space ring. Grandpa Li received a shotgun while Shen Xion was given a powerful crossbow. Xiao Yong's only instruction was simple: unbreakable. Under no circumstances could those weapons fall into anyone else's hands. With the fortress secured, Xiao Yong checked his next system mission. His new objective was to recruit his former teammate Jiang Qi, one of the companions who had fought alongside him during the previous timeline. The only problem was finding him. Fortunately, the system directly identified the city where Jiang Qi was located. Leaving Shen Xion and Grandpa Li behind to guard the fortress and reminding them to follow every rule he had established, Xiao Yong set off to recruit another trusted ally before the apocalypse officially began. The scene then shifted to a KTV, where Jiang Qi and several friends were enjoying karaoke together. During a break, Jiang Qi headed toward the restroom and accidentally bumped into a young woman. He immediately apologized, but her boyfriend didn't care about the apology in the slightest and kicked Jiang Qi hard enough to send him flying backward. Seeing his friend on the ground, another member of the group rushed over to help. The four eyes of the squad stood up to defend Jiang Qi, which only made the meathead even angrier. The guy grabbed him without any effort and started throwing his weight around. Jiang Qi quickly begged him to stop before anyone got seriously hurt. Nearby, a waiter noticed the entire situation unfolding. Even though he was already feeling sick, he still stepped in and tried to break up the fight. The wannabe rich punk immediately grabbed the waiter too, but before things got any worse, the waiter quietly signaled Jiang Qi and his friend to run while they still had the chance. The two wasted no time escaping back to their karaoke room. Their friends were confused by the panicked entrance, so Four Eyes explained everything that had happened, including how they had run into a group of thugs and only escaped because the waiter stepped in to help them. Hearing that instantly pissed off the other guys in the room. They wanted to go back and settle things themselves for messing with one of their own. Jiang Qi quickly stopped them, telling everyone there was no point looking for more trouble. Unfortunately, trouble had already found them. The poor waiter who had helped them was now beaten bloody after the rich thug returned with 3 more friends. Instead of letting the matter go, the group had come looking for Jiang Qi and everyone with him. The thug leader immediately ordered his goons to grab everyone. Outnumbered and completely unprepared, Jiang Qi and Four Eyes could only crouch down while trying to avoid making things worse. Only one guy from their group still had the guts to stand up. Chen barely managed to open his mouth before the thug leader smashed a bottle straight over his head. Blood immediately ran down his face, but somehow he was still conscious. Right then, Xiao Yong arrived outside the KTV. Meanwhile, the thug leader turned to his girlfriend, who insisted they should properly punish the guy who bumped into her earlier. Their attention immediately shifted back to Jiang Qi. Before they could reach him, Chen suddenly forced himself back onto his feet and charged at the thug leader. If another thug hadn't stopped him, that punch probably would have landed. Instead, the thug leader rewarded his courage by smashing another bottle over his head. Chen hit the floor for the second time, leaving his friend shouting in panic. Watching his friend get beaten like that finally pushed Jiang Qi over the edge. He rushed forward, but the thugs immediately restrained him before he could do anything. The last member of the group stood frozen off to the side while the waiter who had helped them earlier struggled just to stay conscious. Then everything changed. The waiter's eyes turned bloodshot and he suddenly lunged into the crowd like a wild animal. Without warning, he sank his teeth straight into one thug's shoulder. Everyone in the room froze. Nobody understood why the waiter had suddenly gone insane. The thugs rushed in to hold him back, but the infected waiter overpowered them with shocking strength. He immediately turned and bit another man's arm before tackling him to the ground. Just when the situation looked completely out of control, someone casually grabbed the crazed waiter and slammed him against the wall hard enough to pin him in place. That someone was Xiao Yong. The room instantly fell silent. Moments ago, several grown men couldn't stop the infected waiter, yet Xiao Yong handled him by himself without breaking a sweat. The thug leader demanded to know who Xiao Yong was, but Xiao Yong ignored him completely and looked straight at Jiang Qi instead. His first question wasn't about the fight, it was whether Jiang Qi had been bitten anywhere. Confused, Jiang Qi checked himself and confirmed he hadn't. Xiao Yong immediately told him to leave with him because they don't have time to waste. The thug leader naturally wasn't about to let them walk away so easily, but before he could make another move, one of his own men, the thug who had been bitten, suddenly grabbed his head in pain. Xiao Yong immediately understood what's happening. The infection had already started spreading. He asked whether the bite on the man's shoulder came from the same waiter. The thug confirmed it, still clueless about why that mattered. Xiao Yong knew the answer. The infected waiter had already turned, and getting bitten that close to the head meant the poor idiot was finished. Xiao Yong dragged the infected waiter into the restroom and locked him inside. The zombie immediately started smashing itself against the door, but at this stage it still lacked the intelligence to open it. Turning back toward the thugs, Xiao Yong rolled his shoulders and casually asked Jiang Qi which one he should deal with first. The funniest part was that Jiang Qi still had absolutely no idea who this guy even was. Furious at Xiao Yong's attitude, the thug leader charged in with a punch. Xiao Yong answered by grabbing him by the face and slamming his head straight into the floor. The bitten lackey rushed in next, only to get folded by a single slap that sent him crashing to the ground. Watching one punch completely flatten their friend left the remaining thugs completely confused. They couldn't understand how somebody could hit that hard. Meanwhile, the infected lackey's body started twisting violently as the virus continued taking over. Xiaoyong looked at the remaining thugs and basically told them they'd understand soon enough why picking fights wasn't such a great hobby. He then ordered Zhang Qi to take his injured friend and leave this place. Seeing everything that had happened, Zhang Qi didn't argue. He simply helped his injured friends leave. As for the thug leader and the rest of his crew, they had already lost any desire to keep fighting. Unfortunately for them, Xiaoyong wasn't interested in letting them walk away after nearly beating his future teammate to death. He called out the thug leader for acting like a drunken piece of trash who almost killed his brother over absolutely nothing. Then he shoved the guy into the restroom, slammed the door shut, and locked it from the outside. The thug leader desperately pounded on the door, but it was already too late. Inside, the bitten lackey had fully transformed into a zombie and immediately attacked the closest people in the room. Standing outside, Xiaoyong quietly listened as their screams echoed through the hallway while the zombies tore into them alive. A staff member finally rushed over to see what all the commotion was about. Xiaoyong immediately told him to lock the room from the outside and call the police, explaining that a patient infected with a dangerous rabies-like illness was trapped inside. The employee froze for a second until Xiaoyong barked at him to stop standing around and do it. Snapping back to reality, the staff member quickly locked the door with a key. With that taken care of, Xiaoyong escorted Zhang Qi and his friends toward the exit. Meanwhile, the remaining employees grew increasingly uneasy after hearing the non-stop banging and screams coming from inside the room. They had only been told there was a rabid flu patient locked inside, but nobody actually knew what was happening. Hoping to find answers, several staff members hurried to the surveillance room and pulled up the security cameras. The moment the footage appeared on the screen, every face in the room turned pale. The people inside were no longer acting human. They were tearing into each other like starving beasts, ripping flesh apart without hesitation. Horrified, the staff wasted no time calling the police. By then, Xiaoyong and the others had already escaped the karaoke bar. After everyone got into the car, they immediately drove away from the scene. Although Zhang Qi was grateful for being rescued, he still had no idea who Xiaoyong actually was. Xiaoyong calmly introduced himself and explained that he had been hired by a confidential client to protect them. One of Zhang Qi's friends brought up the so-called rabid flu, pointing out that nothing like that existed online. Xiaoyong simply reminded them of what they had all witnessed with their own eyes and asked whether they still thought it was just another internet rumor. Four Eyes nervously asked if there was any cure for the infection. Xiaoyong shook his head. From everything he knew, there wasn't one. In fact, things were only going to get worse. The world was about to descend into complete chaos. Even now, zombies had already begun attacking people. The outbreak was still relatively small because most infected individuals remained in the incubation stage, but once they fully turned, the real nightmare would begin. That's exactly why Zhang Qi and his friends needed to follow every instruction he gave without question. Realizing how serious everything had become, the group agreed. Right then, Xiaoyong received a notification that his recruitment mission had been completed. The system unlocked several new items in the store. Some were useful supplies, but the one that caught his attention the most was a post-apocalyptic cultivator box. Looking at the new rewards, Xiaoyong decided he'd claim all of them once they returned to the fortress. Even with Zhang Qi recruited, another problem remained. Back in his previous life, Zhang Qi's group had eventually been wiped out because one of these very friends betrayed everyone. The traitor was somewhere among the three of them. Now Xiaoyong had to figure out which one before history repeated itself. Meanwhile, Kuai Jin was having problems of her own. After hearing the news about the outbreak, she was too scared to even visit a supermarket and insisted her supplies be delivered straight to her apartment instead. Suddenly, loud banging echoed through her front door, scaring her badly enough to immediately hang up on Shuxiang. She cautiously peeked outside and finally relaxed after realizing it was only her best friend. The woman explained that their first-floor neighbor had just been dragged away by police inside an ambulance because he was suspected of being infected. Seeing everything happening around their building made the situation feel much more real. She then asked whether Shuxiang had delivered the supplies he promised. Unfortunately, nothing had arrived yet. Instead of waiting around, Shuxia came up with another plan. She suggested manipulating Shuxiang by feeding his ego. According to her, Xiaoyong had secretly been stockpiling huge amounts of supplies. Kuai Jin was shocked and asked how she even knew that. Shuxia proudly revealed she'd been spying on Xiaoyong through one of her own people and had been tracking all the supplies he kept ordering. Hearing that, Kuai Jin finally realized Xiaoyong must have known about the apocalypse ahead of time. Shuya immediately convinced her to tell Shuxiang everything so they could steal Xiaoyong's stockpile and make a fortune from it themselves. Somehow, these greedy snakes were already planning to loot the guy they had betrayed. Back at the fortress, Zhang Qi stood there staring in disbelief. He never imagined someone would actually build a place that looked like a real fortress. Xiaoyong couldn't help smiling because that reaction was exactly what he expected. Shen Shon and Grandpa Li welcomed him back, relieved to see he had returned returned safely. Xiaoyong assured them everything was under control before introducing Jiang Qi and the rest of his group as the newest members of the team. He then introduced Shen Xion and Grandpa Li in return. Everyone accepted each other without any complaints, trusting Xiaoyong's judgment. Xiaoyong asked Grandpa Li to give the newcomers a full tour of the fortress and explain every rule they needed to follow. While listening, one member of Jiang Qi's group finally raised his hand and requested weapons for their own protection. The moment one of Jiang Qi's friends asked for weapons, Xiaoyong quietly moved him higher on his list of suspects. He already knew someone inside this group would eventually betray them, and Yiming wasn't exactly helping his own case. Before Xiaoyong could respond, Four Eyes quickly stepped in and told Yiming to relax. Asking for weapons before they'd earned anyone's trust was only going to make things awkward. Xiaoyong calmly promised they'd receive weapons in a few days, but right now their priority was taking care of Chen and helping him recover from his injuries. With that settled, everyone headed inside the fortress to wash up and change into clean clothes. Later on, Yiming complained that Four Eyes had ruined their chance to get armed. In his mind, if nobody had interrupted him, they'd already be holding weapons by now. Worse yet, he had convinced himself they were prisoners instead of guests under protection. Four Eyes reminded him that Xiaoyong had literally saved their lives, so accusing him of something like that made no sense. The group admitted they were still curious about Xiaoyong since all they knew was that some mysterious client had hired him to protect them. Yiming refused to listen. He became even more irritated after noticing Chen was being isolated because everyone feared a possible infection. Somehow, he convinced himself Xiaoyong's group was secretly planning to harvest their organs. His brilliant solution was to strike first before it happened. Four Eyes immediately warned him that if they were wrong, they'd be betraying the very person who rescued them. Yiming didn't care. Instead, he admitted he wanted to take control of the entire fortress himself. While Xiaoyong was away, he even suggested dealing with Shen Xion and Grandpa Li so nobody could stand in their way. The room went completely silent. Jiang Qi and the others stared at him like he'd completely lost it. Realizing he'd pushed things too far, Yiming suddenly laughed it off and claimed he was only joking. The tension eased a little, but Four Eyes still reminded him that if Xiaoyong really wanted to hurt them, he never would have allowed them to move around the fortress so freely. Yiming pretended to agree, but inside he had already made up his mind. He fully intended to act on his own. In the next scene, Xiaoyong met with Shen Xion and Grandpa Li. They informed him that Chen was resting in the infirmary and that every security measure had been followed exactly as instructed. Pleased with their work, Xiaoyong thanked them and told them to get some rest because tomorrow would bring far bigger problems. Before ending the conversation, he quietly warned them to keep an eye on Jiang Qi's other two friends since he suspected one of them would eventually betray the group. That night, Xiaoyong headed into the supply warehouse and opened the system store once again. He started by opening the cultivator box, then purchased the sugar, oil, and protein supply box, followed by the armed deterrence box. The rewards were more than worth it. Along with 50 corn seeds, he received a huge collection of valuable food supplies and another 1,500 rounds of ammunition. Looking at the mountain of resources in front of him, Xiaoyong knew these rewards would become a massive advantage once the apocalypse truly began. The following day, trouble came knocking much sooner than expected. The spoiled rich Mercedes clown from the highway finally tracked Xiaoyong down and returned with a group of lackeys looking for revenge. The first order he gave was simple: smash the fortress gate open. His men immediately got to work, but after throwing everything they had at it, the gate didn't even leave them the courtesy of a scratch. The rich brat could hardly believe it. Since brute force wasn't working, they pulled out Molotov cocktails and started throwing them over the walls instead. Flames quickly erupted inside the compound, forcing Shen Xion and everyone else to rush over and put out the fires. Watching the attack unfold only convinced Shen Xion even more that Xiaoyong had been right about the world becoming increasingly dangerous. Meanwhile, Xiaoyong had no intention of sitting around. He grabbed his rifle and climbed up to the watchtower to identify the attackers. Grandpa Li immediately recognized them as the same rich jerk from the highway. The thugs also spotted Xiaoyong standing above them. Their boss shouted for him to come outside, threatening to burn the entire fortress down if he refused. Xiaoyong remained completely calm. He simply told them they had 5 minutes to leave. His response only made the rich brat even angrier. He bragged that they still had 2 full crates of Molotov cocktails and would burn the fortress to the ground if they felt like it. Right then, Xiaoyong received a new system mission. The objective was simple: eliminate the threat attacking the fortress. Grandpa Li nervously suggested firing a warning shot first, but Xiaoyong didn't think that would accomplish anything. The people outside weren't making empty threats anymore. They were already carrying out the attack. Knowing exactly what kind of people he was dealing with, Xiaoyong refused to let them keep threatening everyone inside the fortress. He raised his rifle, lined up a shot, and pulled the trigger. The bullet tore through one thug's arm, instantly dropping him to the ground screaming in pain. Xiaoyong clicked his tongue. He had actually aimed for the man's head, but after going so long without using a firearm, his aim still needed a little readjusting. Still, blowing off an arm was more than enough to crush their courage. The same idiots who had shown up acting tough suddenly turned around and ran like frightened rats. Xiaoyong wasn't interested in letting them regroup and come back tomorrow, so he calmly kept firing. One after another, the fleeing thugs dropped before they could escape. The few who managed to reach the car hurriedly dragged their boss inside while he screamed at the driver to floor it. Unfortunately for them, driving away didn't solve the problem. Xiaoyong switched his rifle toward the vehicle and riddled it with bullets before it could get anywhere. Watching him handle the rifle so confidently left Grandpa Lee wondering what kind of life this kid had lived before they met. As for the rich thug and his crew, their revenge ended right there beside the road. Their car was wrecked, and none of them survived. They came looking for trouble and found exactly what they were asking for. Afterward, Xiaoyong told Grandpa Lee to gather everyone and clean up the bodies. Halfway through, he suddenly changed his mind. Since the apocalypse had already begun, leaving the corpses outside would eventually give them zombies to use for combat training. Instead of moving them, he ordered everyone to leave the bodies exactly where they were. At that very moment, another group was already heading toward the fortress. Xuxiang arrived with Qujin and Shuya riding along. Qujin was clearly getting annoyed by the way her so-called best friend kept acting overly friendly around Xuxiang. After arriving near the fortress, Qujin wanted Shuya to come with her, but Shuya suddenly lost her nerve and tried backing out. Qujin wasn't buying it. Without a guide, Xuxiang's group wouldn't even know which place belonged to Xiaoyong, so she dragged Shuya along despite all the complaints. As the two women walked ahead, Xuxiang quietly told his men to stay ready. Once he received the signal, they'd drive in and begin their plan. While approaching the fortress, Shuya asked why she had been forced to come. Kuai-jin bluntly reminded her that they were cut from the same cloth, so she wasn't about to let her slip away now. Before the conversation could continue, both women suddenly froze. Several bodies were lying outside the fortress. It didn't take much to realize there had been a gunfight. For a moment, both of them seriously considered turning around. Then another thought crossed their minds. Maybe the dead group had come for Xiaoyong's supplies too. That immediately made them wonder whether Xiaoyong himself had died during the shootout. They didn't seem particularly concerned about him. They were far more interested in whether the supplies were still sitting inside waiting to be stolen. They briefly considered going back and letting Xuxiang handle everything, but Kuai-jin decided they should move closer and scout the situation first. When they reached the entrance, they found the massive gate completely sealed. Looking at its size, they realized forcing their way inside wasn't happening. That made them question whether Xiaoyong had survived after all. From the watchtower above, Shen Shon spotted them and demanded to know why they were there. Both women immediately put on innocent faces and claimed they were Xiaoyong's friends. Shen Shon relayed everything to Xiaoyong. Hearing another girl's voice instantly irritated Kuai-jin, who assumed Xiaoyong had already found someone else. Shuya quickly reminded her to keep those emotions to herself because they were standing in front of armed people. Besides, she still believed Xuxiang and his men could handle the situation since they had brought guns of their own. The only obstacle was getting past the fortress gate. Xiaoyong soon walked up to the wall and looked down at the two visitors. Curious about their real purpose, he activated Mind's Eye. Their smiles looked convincing on the surface, but their true intentions were full of distrust and malice. They pretended to be worried about his safety, but Xiaoyong couldn't help laughing at the performance. Then he casually exposed the rest of their plan by revealing that Xuxiang and all of his lackeys were hiding nearby waiting for the signal. Both women immediately froze. Neither of them could understand how he knew about that. Xiaoyong didn't bother explaining. Instead, he fired a warning shot. The sudden gunfire shocked Kuai-jin and Xuxia, who clearly hadn't expected things to escalate that fast. Shuya kept her composure and quietly reminded Kuai-jin to stay calm because the man pointing a rifle at them wasn't someone they could afford to provoke. As for Xiaoyong, he had no intention of killing the two of them just yet. For people like them, a quick ending would be far too merciful. Without warning, one of the corpses lying outside suddenly twitched and stood back up. Then another followed, and another. Every dead thug Xiaoyong had left outside was turning into a zombie. The same rabid infection everyone had seen on the news was now bringing the dead back to life. Xiaoyong watched the scene unfold without the slightest surprise. For him, this was the perfect punishment. He wanted Qujin and Shuya to experience exactly what awaited people who kept digging their own graves. The two women instantly panicked and ran for their lives. Desperate to escape the growing zombie pack, they sprinted straight back toward Xuxiang and his crew, who had absolutely no idea why they were running. That confusion lasted only until they saw a group of zombies charging right behind them. Both women broke down in tears, begging the fatso to save them. Xuxiang never expected to run into infected people out in the open. He immediately abandoned the plan and ordered his men to retreat. Saving the two women wasn't even on his priority list. He simply left them behind. Kuai-jin wasn't about to accept dying like that. In a shameless move, she hurled her purse to Xuxia, causing her so-called best friend to lose her footing and crash onto the ground. With nowhere left to run, Xuxia was instantly surrounded. The zombies tore into her flesh as she screamed in agony. Even while being devoured alive, she cursed Kuei Jin, swearing she'd meet an even uglier end someday. Meanwhile, Kuei Jin kept running without looking back, convinced sacrificing someone else had been the right decision. Watching everything from the fortress, Xiao Yong received system points for eliminating another threat. Shen Xun, on the other hand, could only stare in horror. Right after that, Xiao Yong received another system mission to eliminate the zombies wandering around the fortress. Shen Xion still couldn't believe the infection was powerful enough to make dead people stand back up. Xiao Yong explained that this was only the beginning. The infected wouldn't just become zombies while alive. Even after death, they could still mutate and rise again. Realizing everyone needed to understand how serious things had become, Xiao Yong immediately gathered the entire team for a meeting. Once everyone was assembled, he instructed them to stay alert at all times and keep every entrance securely locked. He also explained that their bodies still needed time to adapt to the source of the infection. If they adapted successfully, the chances of suddenly mutating would be much lower. Even after hearing that, Jiang Qi couldn't stop worrying about Chen. His injured friend was still lying in the infirmary, and the infection inside his body was slowly getting worse. Outside the fortress, the city had already descended into chaos. Fires burned across the streets while the apocalypse spread further with every passing moment. The scene then shifted to Old Song. He instructed his family to stay inside the house while he went to the warehouse to collect whatever supplies remained. Before leaving, he repeatedly warned them not to open the door for anyone. Unfortunately, someone started banging on the door almost immediately. Motioning for his family to stay quiet, Old Song grabbed a golf club and cautiously approached the entrance, ready to swing if an infected person forced their way inside. Looking through the door, he recognized Yang Tao and lowered his guard. That single decision became his biggest mistake. Yang Tao had arrived with several men, and the moment the door opened, they rushed inside and beat Old Song to the ground. Shocked by the betrayal, Old Song demanded to know what he was doing. Yang Tao showed zero gratitude for everything his former boss had done over the years. Instead, he complained that he had always been treated like nothing more than a servant. Old Song reminded him that he had even paid the down payment for Yang Tao's house, but Yang Tao shamelessly brushed it off, arguing that someone with Old Song's wealth should have been able to afford several houses anyway. The real reason he came was simple. He wanted the warehouse keys so he could steal every last supply inside. When Old Song refused, Yang Tao immediately turned his attention toward the family. He grabbed Old Song's wife by the hair, making their young son yell at him to let her go. The boy could do little more than shout before Yang Tao slapped him hard across the face. Watching his wife and child being abused pushed Old Song into a rage, but Yang Tao coldly told him none of them would get hurt as long as he cooperated. Left with no other choice, Old Song was forced to lead them to the warehouse. After unlocking the doors, the group rushed inside, only for Yang Tao to discover the place was nearly empty. Furious, he demanded an explanation. Old Song reminded him that their biggest customer, Xiao Yong, had recently purchased almost everything in stock, including the expired food. There was barely anything left to steal. The moment Xiao Yong's name came up, Yang Tao's eyes lit up. If Xiao Yong had taken all those supplies, then robbing him would solve every problem at once. Old Song immediately warned him against it. From his own encounter with Xiao Yong, he already knew the young man wasn't someone to underestimate. In fact, he suspected Xiao Yong had somehow learned about the apocalypse long before everyone else, and prepared in advance. Yang Tao ignored every warning. Rather than risk himself, he decided his former boss would be the one doing the dirty work for him. Old Song had no idea what Yang Tao was talking about until the guy made his intentions crystal clear. If Old Song failed to bring back Xiao Yong's supplies, Yang Tao would take his anger out on his wife and son instead. Left with his family's lives hanging over his head, Old Song had no choice but to obey. Back at the fortress, Chen's condition continued getting worse. The infection had completely stripped away his reason, leaving him to thrash around like a wild beast. Watching their friend deteriorate into that state left Jiang Qi and the others devastated. At that moment, Yi Ming coldly suggested putting Chen down. Once again, Xiao Yong quietly took note of his behavior. Jiang Qi couldn't believe Yi Ming would even suggest something like that, but Yi Ming didn't back down. He argued that there was no point keeping an infected person alive when there was no cure, and if Chen ever escaped confinement, everyone inside the fortress would be in danger. As harsh as it sounded, Xiao Yong admitted he wasn't wrong. There truly wasn't any way to save Chen anymore. Instead of answering directly, Xiao Yong pulled out a blade and handed it to Yi Ming. The room immediately fell silent. Yi Ming stared at the weapon before finally realizing what Xiao Yong wanted. If he truly believed Chen had to die, then Xiao Yong wanted him to be the one to do it. The blade trembled slightly in Yi Ming's hand while Xiao Yong calmly reminded him that he'd been asking for a weapon since the day he arrived. Now he had one. If he believed killing Chen was the right choice, he could personally send his friend off. Before Yi Ming could react any further, Jiang Qi stepped in and took the blade away. He understood exactly how heavy that responsibility was and volunteered to do it himself. Xiao Yong warned him that once he crossed that line, he'd have to live with taking his friend's life. Jiang Qi accepted that burden. He trusted Xiaoyong's judgment and was prepared to do what had to be done. Seeing his resolve, Xiaoyong gave him permission. Moments later, Jiang Qi raised the blade and prepared to strike, but just before it came down, Xiaoyong suddenly stopped him. He had changed his mind. Chen's condition wasn't normal. The system had just informed Xiaoyong that Chen was undergoing a rare mutation, making him far more valuable alive than dead. After everyone left, Xiaoyong entered the room alone. Chen snarled like a feral beast, but Xiaoyong walked right up to him without showing the slightest fear. Looking directly at the infected man, he calmly reminded him that he still had one final job to do. The following day, Old Song's luck somehow got even worse. While driving toward the fortress, he crashed his car straight into a utility pole. Thankfully, the fortress wasn't far away anymore, so he decided to continue on foot. Unfortunately, that was when a zombie suddenly attacked him. During the struggle, the creature managed to bite his arm. Old Song shoved it away, rushed back to his car, grabbed a metal pipe, and fought back. He repeatedly smashed the zombie over the head until it finally collapsed into a bloody mess. The problem was that the fight had taken too long. More zombies had already begun closing in on him. Injured and exhausted, Old Song could only keep moving toward the fortress. Meanwhile, Xiaoyong had already gathered everyone outside for combat training. Every member of the group was equipped with weapons to clear the zombies wandering near the base. Shen Xiong struggled with the protective gear covering her body, complaining that it was uncomfortable. Xiaoyong explained that the armor was necessary because zombies possessed explosive bursts of strength, especially against people without real combat experience. Once they became more skilled, they could worry about comfort later. Before long, the group spotted a lone zombie wandering nearby. Xiaoyong signaled everyone to prepare because the target had entered attack range. The zombie quickly noticed them and charged forward. As it lunged, Xiaoyong calmly reminded everyone to follow the instructions he had already given them. They needed to maintain proper spacing and constantly cover one another. He easily sidestepped the zombie's attack and demonstrated how to create an opening immediately after dodging. He explained that the best places to strike were the temples and the back of the neck. Four Eyes gathered his courage and swung his weapon at the zombie's head. Unfortunately, instead of hurting the zombie, he mostly embarrassed himself. Xiaoyong immediately pointed out the mistake. Smashing the skull was the least effective way to fight one of these things. Worse yet, the failed attack left Four Eyes completely exposed, giving the zombie a chance to counterattack and forcing him to desperately block the incoming strike with his weapon. The zombie refused to let Four Eyes breathe, relentlessly pushing toward him while the poor guy desperately held the attack back and waited for someone to bail him out. Xiaoyong gave him credit where it was due. At least he had managed to defend himself instead of freezing completely. Seeing the opening, Jiang Qi rushed in and struck the zombie right across the back of its neck. The hit landed exactly where Xiaoyong had told them to aim, creating the perfect opportunity for everyone else to pile on until the creature finally stopped moving. Xiaoyong reminded the team that one clean hit wasn't enough. They needed to keep attacking until they were absolutely certain the zombie was dead. Jiang Qi turned around and asked how they had performed. Xiaoyong simply told them they should be judged that for themselves. Before the conversation could continue, another zombie silently charged him from Xiaoyong's blind side. Jiang Qi immediately shouted a warning. The creature was only inches away from sinking its teeth into Xiaoyong's shoulder until he casually turned around, grabbed it by the head, and stopped it cold. Without showing the slightest panic, Xiaoyong used the situation as another lesson, reminding everyone that keeping track of their surroundings was just as important as knowing where to strike. Watching him react so effortlessly left the rest of the group genuinely impressed by his speed and awareness. Meanwhile, Old Song continued making his way toward the fortress. Spotting several unfamiliar vehicles parked outside, he couldn't help wondering if another group had already beaten Xiaoyong and taken over the place. Then he heard people talking nearby. Recognizing Xiaoyong's voice, he carefully crept closer and hid behind a nearby vehicle to see what was happening. What he saw completely caught him off guard. Xiaoyong and his team was calmly hunting zombies together. Unfortunately for Old Song, something else was hiding beneath the very car he chose for cover. Juya, now fully transformed into a zombie, suddenly crawled out and grabbed his leg. The unexpected attack sent him crashing onto the ground. Completely exposed, he watched in horror as the zombie lunged straight at him. Just before she reached him, a gunshot echoed through the area. Juya's head exploded, and her body collapsed beside him. Xiaoyong had arrived just in time. Old Song quickly shoved the corpse away while Xiaoyong asked why he has come all the way here. Old Song hurriedly tried explaining everything, but before he could finish, Xiaoyong noticed the bite mark on his arm. His expression immediately changed. Raising his gun, Yaoyong calmly stated that Old Song was already beyond saving. Old Song begged him to listen before pulling the trigger. Xiaoyong agreed to hear him out, but made it clear he wasn't letting an infected person get anywhere close. Old Song sadly accepted his fate. He already knew his time was running out. Before turning into a zombie, the only thing he wanted was to save his family. He explained how Yang Tao had taken his wife and son hostage and was forcing him to steal Xiao Yong's supplies. Old Song admitted he had made plenty of mistakes in his life, but even he had never stooped as low as Yang Tao. His family had nothing to do with any of it, yet Yang Tao still intended to use them as leverage. Swallowing his pride, Old Song begged Xiao Yong to save them. Xiao Yong quietly considered the request. Xu Shang had always been selfish, but Old Song had genuinely helped deliver the supplies before the apocalypse. Besides, adding more trustworthy people to the fortress wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Just then, the system assigned Xiao Yong a new mission to rescue Old Song's family, rewarding him with 25 points upon completion. Combined with his current mission to eliminate the zombies around the fortress, the decision became much easier. Xiao Yong accepted the request and promised to protect his family. Hearing those words, Old Song collapsed to his knees, overwhelmed with gratitude. By then he could already feel the infection taking over. Knowing he didn't have much time left, he asked for one final favor. He didn't want to die among people. Xiao Yong called for Shen Xion and asked her to bring a bicycle from storage. Although she had no idea why, she immediately went to get it. Xiao Yong then instructed Old Song to ride somewhere isolated where nobody else could be endangered after he transformed. Without asking any further questions, Old Song accepted the plan and thanked Xiao Yong one last time. In the next scene, he pedaled away alone as the infection steadily consumed him. Even during his final moments as a human, his thoughts never left his family. After watching him disappear, Xiao Yong turned his attention to the pile of zombie corpses left behind. He poured gasoline over every body before setting them ablaze, reducing them to ashes. With that, the team's first zombie training exercise officially came to an end. Xiao Yong was satisfied with the results. As long as they fought together, they were capable of dealing with scattered zombies. However, taking on a small horde or a full zombie wave was still far beyond their current abilities. That would require much more training. Xiao Yong then told everyone to follow him. The next scene brought them to another storage facility inside the fortress. He instructed Grandpa Li to guard the weapon warehouse throughout the night because he planned to head into the city himself. Grandpa Li couldn't understand why Xiao Yong wanted to enter a city that had already fallen into chaos. Hearing the plan, both Jiang Qi and Four Eyes immediately volunteered to accompany him on the mission, but Xiao Yong turned them down without hesitation. He told them the mission was far beyond their current abilities. Right now, their only responsibility was protecting the fortress while he handled the dangerous work himself. A few minutes later, Xiao Yong was already on the road with his weapons packed and ready. During the drive, he opened the system store again. For the first time in a long while, the shelves were practically empty and even the refresh option had finally become available. This time, he spent points to manually refresh the store. A brand new selection immediately appeared. Among the new items were a black tech box, a life-saving box, and an armed threat box. The system also warned him that every manual refresh would double the cost of the next one, meaning he couldn't afford to waste points carelessly. After looking through the options, Xiao Yong decided the black tech supply box was the best investment and spent his points on it, leaving himself with only 6 remaining. Opening the box rewarded him with another physical enhancement potion, except this version increased his attributes by 5 points instead of 2. It was an even bigger improvement than the last one. Without hesitation, Xiao Yong injected the potion into his body. As its effects spread through him, his physical abilities climbed to an entirely new level. His destination wasn't random either. He was heading straight toward Old Song's house. Back there, Old Song's wife and son were anxiously waiting, hoping he'd somehow solve everything. Instead, Yang Tao and his gang barged into the house. Terrified, the defenseless woman asked what they planned to do. One of the filthy creeps forced his way toward her and shamelessly declared they were going to have their fun while her husband was away. She desperately resisted, begging them to stop, while her young son tried pushing one of the men away despite being far too small to do anything. Right then, a man named Li walked into the room and demanded to know what all the noise was about. One of the goons casually told him they were about to have some fun and even invited him to join. Li immediately shut that idea down. He reminded everyone that the job wasn't finished yet, so fooling around was the last thing they should be doing. One thug complained that they'd done this sort of thing plenty of times before, so he didn't see the problem. Li lost his patience and reminded the idiot exactly whose family they were threatening. If Old Song's wife couldn't bear the humiliation and took her own life, Old Song would have nothing left to lose, and every single one of them would become his target. He told the goon to wait until the job was finished. After Old Song was dealt with, there would be plenty of time later. Grumbling that Li had completely ruined the mood, the thug reluctantly backed off anyway. As the group walked out, one of them shot the terrified woman a disgusting grin and told her to wait her turn. Left behind, the mother and her son could do nothing but hold each other and cry. As night fell, zombies completely took over the streets. Meanwhile, Xiaoyong continued driving through the abandoned city while quietly reviewing his latest improvements. With his stamina now reaching 13 points, he possessed more than twice the physical ability of an average person. His reflexes, coordination, and overall control had improved dramatically as well. He skillfully weaved through the wrecked streets, sliding around blocked roads while making his way deeper into the city. Before long, the number of zombies became too great to ignore. Since driving any farther would only attract more attention, Xiaoyong parked the car and continued on foot toward the city center. Just then, two zombies noticed him and charged. Xiaoyong remained completely calm. He sidestepped the attack, slammed his shoulder into one zombie with enough force to knock it into the second one, then immediately summoned his sword. One clean swing later, both zombies lost their heads at the same time. Compared to his current strength, these creatures had become little more than moving practice targets. His strength had risen far beyond that of an ordinary person, and even his senses had become much sharper. Listening carefully, he estimated his destination was now only about 800 meters away. At the same time, a group of zombies continued slamming themselves against the glass entrance of a nearby grocery store. Inside the grocery store, the survivors desperately reinforced the entrance, dragging heavy shelves and anything else they could find in front of the doors. They were simply hoping the barricade would hold long enough for them to figure out a way to escape. Terrified, little Brad asked his father if they were all going to die there. His father tried to comfort him in the most questionable way possible, saying those ugly sons of witches weren't getting inside, and even if they did, they'd at least be reunited with his mother. That speech did absolutely nothing to calm the kid, who burst into even louder tears. The police officer standing nearby immediately frowned, wondering what kind of pep talk that was supposed to be. The father shrugged and fired back that if he actually thought before speaking, he'd probably be working as a property manager instead. Even the officer was too tired to argue with that logic. Deep down, though, he was beginning to wonder if they really were going to die there. Just as the atmosphere reached its breaking point, several gunshots echoed outside. One zombie at the entrance suddenly had its head blown apart. Brad nearly jumped out of his skin while his father stood there completely confused about what had just happened. The officer quickly told everyone to quietly move the barricade aside and warned them not to make unnecessary noise. After cautiously opening the entrance, they discovered every zombie nearby had already been taken care of. The group slowly stepped outside, carefully checking the area. Brad suddenly shouted that there was a mutant zombie nearby. His father immediately asked what nonsense he was talking about this time. Brad excitedly explained that mutants were stronger and faster zombies just like the ones from comics, novels, and video games. His father rolled his eyes and snapped that his son was still thinking about games during the apocalypse, which probably explained why his grades had always been terrible. The officer couldn't help cutting in, asking what grades had to do with surviving monsters in the middle of the street. He told both of them to quit arguing and focus on watching their surroundings before a real threat showed up. Following the officer's lead, the group carefully continued down the road while staying alert. When they reached a nearby intersection, Old Song suddenly noticed a lone figure standing across the street. It was Xiaoyong, quietly checking his system while assigning newly earned stat points. Brad immediately pointed at him and yelled that the mutant zombie had appeared. Fortunately, the officer still had common sense. One look was enough for him to realize the young man was obviously a survivor, not one of the infected. Xiaoyong looked over after hearing the commotion and couldn't help laughing at Brad's wild imagination, casually telling the kid to stop treating real life like one of his games. Relieved to find another survivor, the officer cautiously approached Xiaoyong and warned him that wandering around alone was far too dangerous. He suggested Xiaoyong join their group since surviving together would give everyone a much better chance. Xiaoyong calmly asked who they were and why only a small group of them was out there. While keeping watch on the streets, the officer explained they had come out searching for supplies and that many civilians were still gathered at Rangxing Garden. Hearing that location immediately triggered Xiaoyong's memory. He remembered that Junyu Mansion was located nearby. The father nodded and confirmed it was just across the street. He once again encouraged Xiaoyong to travel with them, insisting there was strength in numbers. He even pointed out that Officer Lee was carrying a gun and that their group already had experience dealing with zombies, so they were capable of protecting him, if only they knew who they were actually talking to. Xiaoyong didn't brag or reveal anything about himself. He simply agreed and continued moving with the group. As they carefully made their way through the streets, the father got curious and asked why Xiaoyong wanted to go to Junyu Mansion. Xiaoyong simply answered that he was looking for someone. Then, with a heavy sigh, he warned Xiaoyong to prepare himself because the world had already fallen apart, and whoever he was searching for was probably already dead. Officer Lee silently agreed. Even if that person hadn't been killed by zombies, they could have already run into those mysterious beasts roaming the city. Hearing the word beasts immediately caught Xiaoyong's attention, and he asked Officer Li exactly what he meant. Officer Li explained that a gang of thugs had taken over the Buyu Mountain Villa area on the eastern side of the city. To stay alive, they robbed and attacked other survivors without hesitation. His group had crossed paths with them once before, and many of their companions had died because of it. He didn't want to dwell on those memories, simply reminding everyone that zombies weren't the only danger anymore. Other survivors could be just as deadly. Before anyone could respond, Brad suddenly shouted for Officer Li to watch out. The officer spun around just in time to see a zombie lunging straight at him. Reacting quickly, he fired several well-placed shots and dropped it before it could bite him. Breathing heavily, Officer Li realized just how close that call had been. Unfortunately, the gunfire echoed through the streets, drawing the attention of nearby zombies. As more growls filled the air, panic flashed across his face. Then he spotted an abandoned bus nearby. Everyone immediately sprinted toward it. Watching their decision, Xiaoyong quickly weighed the situation in his mind. Running blindly through the streets would only attract more zombies, while the bus offered a solid defensive position. The trade-off was obvious though. If the bus was overrun, they'd have nowhere left to escape. After considering both sides, Xiaoyong silently gave the plan a passing score. By the time he finished thinking, everyone else had already climbed aboard. Officer Li called for Xiaoyong to hurry, and Xiaoyong jumped inside just as the officer slammed the door shut behind him. Officer Li immediately warned everyone to carefully check every seat and corner in case any zombies were hiding inside. Before the search could even begin, Brad shouted that the zombies were still coming. Looking outside, they saw more infected surrounding the bus from every direction. The creatures began slamming themselves against the doors and walls, trying to force their way inside. More zombies kept arriving every second. Officer Li desperately struggled to keep the entrance shut, but the pressure continued increasing. Seeing the door starting to give way, Xiaoyong stepped forward, pressed his hand against it, and slammed it shut with overwhelming force. The impact shoved the zombies backward and completely sealed the entrance again. Officer Li could only stare in disbelief at the ridiculous strength Xiaoyong had just displayed. Without wasting time, Xiaoyong suggested they hold the door while everyone else smashed the windows and attacked the zombies from inside the bus. Officer Li immediately agreed. The group shattered the windows, and Old Song leaned out to strike every zombie that got close. The others firmly held onto him so he wouldn't fall out while attacking. Officer Li chose not to waste ammunition, knowing he only had a limited number of bullets left for emergencies. Xiaoyong then handed him a crossbow. Officer Li looked completely puzzled, wondering where it had suddenly come from. Xiaoyong casually claimed he had picked it up earlier, leaving the officer with even more questions than answers. Putting those questions aside, Officer Li joined Old Song, using the crossbow while everyone worked together to clear out the zombies surrounding the bus. After a hard fight, the last zombie finally fell. With the area secure, everyone climbed back out of the bus. Brad instantly became full of confidence, proudly declaring that they had escaped another deadly situation and insisting they had to be the chosen heroes of the apocalypse. Xiaoyong simply reminded everyone to stay alert and avoid making careless mistakes again. Back at the fortress, everyone hoped Xiaoyong's trip was going smoothly. Yiming suddenly volunteered to stand watch that night. Four Eyes teased him, asking why he was acting so motivated all of a sudden. Clearly irritated, Yiming snapped back and insisted he had always taken his responsibilities seriously. Four Eyes quickly backed off, asking why Yiming was getting so worked up over a simple joke. Seeing Yiming willingly take the night shift, Uncle Shang told everyone else to head back and rest while Yiming handled the watch. Before leaving, he reminded Yiming to wake everyone immediately if anything unusual happened. As the night grew quieter, Yiming sat alone on guard, silently watching the fortress. Once he was certain everyone had gone to sleep, his expression completely changed. It was finally time to carry out the plan he had been waiting for before Xiaoyong returned. Elsewhere, Grandpa Li slept peacefully with the key to the weapons storage room resting beside his pillow. He never noticed Yiming quietly slipping into the room. Carefully approaching the bed, Yiming reached for the key. Just before he could grab it, Grandpa Li suddenly opened his eyes and caught him in the act. Confused, Grandpa Li demanded to know what he was doing there. Before he could say another word, Yiming drove a hard punch straight into his face. Snatching the key, he immediately turned and sprinted out of the room while Grandpa Li stumbled after him, shouting for him to give the key back. The noise immediately woke everyone inside the fortress. Grandpa Li rushed out and shouted that Yiming had stolen the key to the weapons storage room. The entire group took off after him, but while running, Yiming kept throwing random objects into the hallway to slow them down. The obstacles forced everyone to stop long enough for him to widen the gap. As Yiming ran past the infirmary, another idea crossed his mind. Since he had already betrayed everyone, he figured he might as well go all the way. He rushed into the room where Chen was still strapped to the bed after turning into a zombie. As Yiming approached, Chen suddenly lashed out with one arm. Yiming froze for a second. One of Chen's arms was supposed to be tied down, so he wondered if the restraints had been left too loose. Instead of worrying, he actually welcomed it. If Chen could already move, it saved him the trouble of untying him himself. Meanwhile, the others finally cleared the obstacles and reached the hallway. The moment they saw Chen outside the infirmary, their expressions sank. Grandpa Li cursed himself for failing to realize Yiming had been a snake all along. Shenxion immediately told everyone that regretting it wouldn't solve anything. Since all the weapons were locked away, their first priority was getting Chen back inside before anyone got bitten. Uncle Shang quickly reminded everyone of Xiaoyong's instructions: stay calm, work together, and never let a zombie get close enough to bite. Following that plan, they cautiously closed in. Zhang Qi grabbed Chen by the neck while the others pinned down his arms. Grandpa Li pointed toward the infirmary and yelled for everyone to push him back inside. After counting to 3, the group shoved the struggling zombie through the doorway before slamming the door shut and locking it as tightly as they could. Once Chen was secured again, one of them admitted the zombie hadn't been nearly as difficult to restrain as expected. The others quietly agreed, but Grandpa Li reminded them they had already wasted too much time. By now, Yiming had probably gotten every weapon in the storage room. Right as he finished speaking, Yiming calmly walked back into view. Smirking, he asked Grandpa Li who he was calling a little brat. In his hands was a gun. Looking around, Yiming complained that the weapon room only contained a single firearm, but he figured one gun was more than enough to deal with everyone standing there. After getting rid of them, he could search the rest of the fortress at his own pace. Raising the gun, he ordered everyone back into the room. Zhang Qi desperately tried to reason with him, reminding Yiming that Xiaoyong had saved all of their lives and given them a chance to survive. Yiming completely dismissed the argument. According to him, just because Xiaoyong had saved them didn't mean they had to spend the rest of their lives serving him. Grandpa Li immediately fired back, calling Yiming an ungrateful snake. While everyone argued outside, Chen quietly stirred inside the infirmary. It looked like he was about to make his own move before the scene shifted elsewhere. Back at Rengshan Garden, Officer Li carefully explained the route leading to Junyu Mansion. He warned Xiaoyong that the residential area had a complicated layout with countless places for zombies to hide, so he needed to stay extremely cautious. Officer Li also told him that after finding whoever he was looking for, he should return to Rengshan Garden and meet up with everyone there. For safety, he specifically recommended using the community's side entrance instead of the main gate. Xiaoyong thanked him for the advice and set off toward Junyu Mansion. The father wanted to accompany him, feeling they owed Xiaoyong after he had helped save all of them. Officer Li stopped him. Nobody knew what was waiting inside Junyu Mansion, and if they accidentally walked into a zombie horde, the entire group would be wiped out. The father reluctantly asked why they were letting Xiaoyong walk into such a dangerous place alone. Officer Li replied that he had already warned Xiaoyong about every risk. Beyond that, all they could do was trust his abilities because Xiaoyong had already proven he was far more capable than an ordinary survivor. Meanwhile, the streets around Junyu Mansion were packed with wandering zombies. Inside the house, the thugs holding Old Song's wife and son hostage were growing impatient because Old Song still hadn't returned. One of the scumbags finally said he'd held back long enough and planned to force himself on Old Song's wife that very night because otherwise he wouldn't be able to sleep. Another thug pointed out that Old Song might already be dead after going out alone. The first creep didn't seem to care. He coldly replied that once they got what they wanted, they'd tie the woman up first so she wouldn't even have the chance to take her own life. The thugs figured they had plenty of time before anything went wrong, so they decided to satisfy their filthy urges while they still could. Outside, Old Song's wife could hear every disgusting word they were saying, and fear completely took over. Li finally gave his men permission to go ahead, but warned them not to let anything happen to the woman while they were fooling around. Just then, something outside caught his attention. Looking through the entrance, he noticed every zombie nearby had mysteriously collapsed. He had no idea why, but the answer was simple. Xiaoyong had already cleared the area. Curious, Li stepped outside, wondering if a rescue team had arrived. That thought lasted less than a second. The moment he crossed the doorway, a dagger flashed through the air and sliced clean across his throat. His head rolled across the ground while the rest of his body collapsed where it stood. Inside, the remaining scumbags had no clue their lookout had already been turned into a headless corpse. Smirking like complete creeps, they started undoing their belts and dragged the woman away from her son. When she screamed, one of them slapped her hard across the face before throwing the boy aside. Despite being just a kid, he still tried to fight back with everything he had. The thugs kicked him out of the room anyway and slammed the door shut behind behind him. Standing outside alone, the boy suddenly noticed Li's headless body collapse onto the floor. Frozen with fear, he slowly looked toward the entrance and saw a figure standing there. It was Xiao Yong. He calmly asked whether Old Song was the boy's father. The child hesitated for a moment before quietly answering. Back inside the room, the thugs had already started ripping the woman's clothes while she desperately tried to cover herself. One of those pieces of trash slapped her again, ordering her to scream louder while they harassed her. She stubbornly stayed silent because she refused to let her son hear what was happening. Growing impatient, the thug decided to stop wasting time and plan to finish first before letting the others take their turns. Right then, the door suddenly burst open. One thug assumed the little boy had somehow kicked it open and turned toward the entrance. Before he could say another word, a blade flashed past him. His head separated from his body so cleanly that he remained standing for a brief moment before collapsing. Another thug, completely unaware of what had happened, complained that his friend was just standing there and told him to hurry up and throw the kid back outside. Only then did he realize his buddy no longer had a head. Confusion instantly spread across the room. Before anyone could react, Xiao Yong grabbed another thug and slammed him straight into the wall. The man who had been happily loosening his belt a second earlier suddenly started stammering, asking who Xiao Yong was. Xiao Yong didn't waste time answering. He drove a brutal kick straight into the thug's face. Meanwhile, back at the fortress, Yiming still had everyone at gunpoint. He warned them one last time to move into the room or he'd start shooting. Grandpa Li quietly told everyone to cooperate for now. Shen Xiun didn't want to back down, but Grandpa Li insisted. Since Yiming had the gun, they had to wait for another opportunity. Yiming sneered at them, claiming there was nothing left to figure out. He boasted that they still hadn't seen how ruthless he could be and decided Grandpa Li would be the first person to die since he had been talking the most. Jiang Qi and the others desperately tried talking him down, but before anyone could do anything, a loud sound echoed through the hallway. Everyone turned toward the infirmary just as the locked door slowly began opening by itself. Chen stepped out. Somehow, despite being in his berserk state, he had unlocked the door on his own. Even the others couldn't believe what they were seeing. Chen immediately fixed his eyes on Yiming, making it painfully obvious who his target was. Panicking, Yiming raised the gun and fired, determined to put Chen down before the zombie reached him. Instead, the gun jammed. Realizing the weapon had failed him, Yiming barely had time to react before Chen lunged forward and tore into him, killing the traitor who had been causing trouble ever since Xiao Yong brought him into the fortress. After finishing him off, Chen dragged Yiming's lifeless body back toward the infirmary. Everyone stood there completely stunned, unable to understand what was happening. Once inside, Chen casually picked up the infirmary key, tossed it aside, stepped back into the room and locked himself inside again, leaving the entire group speechless. At the same time, Xiao Yong had already finished dealing with the thugs at Old Song's house. He freed Old Song's wife, then called her son over. Instinctively, the frightened mother pulled the boy close and asked Xiao Yong what he intended to do. Xiao Yong didn't explain, he simply told the boy to come to him. After reassuring his mother that everything would be okay, the boy slowly walked over. Xiao Yong placed a dagger into his hands and told him to kill the men responsible for everything they had done. The surviving thugs instantly understood what was about to happen and immediately began begging for mercy. Even the boy's mother tried to stop it, reminding Xiao Yong that her son was still only a child. Xiao Yong looked at the boy and calmly told him that he couldn't keep thinking of himself as just a child anymore. From this moment forward, everything had changed. If he wanted to protect his mother, he needed the courage to eliminate the monsters who had hurt her. The boy's mind replayed the disgusting grins of the thugs who had tormented his family. Clenching the dagger, he gathered every bit of courage he had left and charged forward. One after another, he finished them off, finally avenging everything they had done to his mother. Xiao Li stood there in horror as she watched her son cross that line. The boy, however, wasn't celebrating. His anger slowly turned into grief. Looking at Xiao Yong, he quietly asked if his father was already gone. Xiao Yong gave him an honest answer and nodded. Unable to carry the weight of that truth any longer, the boy dropped the blood-stained dagger, ran back to his mother, and buried himself in her arms. Xiao Li held him tightly before turning toward Xiao Yong. Desperate to keep her son alive, she begged him to take the boy away, promising she would do anything if it meant her child could survive. Before Xiao Yong could answer, the boy shook his head and insisted he wanted to stay with his mother and protect her himself. Xiao Yong simply told them both to come with him. He had already promised Old Song that he would keep his family safe, and he intended to keep that promise. With nowhere else to go, the mother and son followed behind him, carefully stepping past the bodies of the dead thugs. Seeing the corpses scattered across the floor made the boy visibly nervous. He quietly asked what kind of monster had killed all those men. Xiao Yong answered as casually as ever. It was him. From this point on, the boy would be called Shui, while his mother was Xiao Li. Before they could continue any farther, Xiao Yong suddenly raised his hand, signaling both of them to stop. He had picked up suspicious sounds nearby. Turning toward Xiao Li, he asked whether she knew where Building 8 of Banyan Garden was located. She pointed straight ahead, explaining it was in the direction they were already facing, then wondered why he wanted to know. The scene shifted to Building 8 where another group of scumbags had surrounded the entrance. Standing outside, they loudly demanded that everyone inside hand over their supplies, promising to spare them if they cooperated. Inside the building, the survivors hid in their apartments while desperately discussing what to do. Someone suggested surrendering the supplies, hoping the looters would leave afterward. Officer Lee immediately rejected the idea. He bluntly warned everyone those men were nothing but animals who wouldn't honor a single promise. According to him, they'd kill everyone except the women. Outside, the gang repeated their warning, giving the residents 10 minutes before they forced their way in. One frightened woman considered going outside to beg for mercy, but another immediately refused, saying she'd rather die than become a toy for those animals. Before the argument could grow any bigger, the big guy among the survivors stepped in and told everyone to calm down. He assured them nobody was surrendering and instructed everyone to guard the hallway because he believed the looters wouldn't be able to break through. Outside, the gang leader looked completely relaxed. His subordinate pointed out that forcing their way inside wouldn't be easy because the survivors had an armed leader and were using the building itself as cover. The leader simply smirked. There was no reason to rush. Instead, he ordered his men to cut off the water supply to the first-floor apartments and planned to wait until the survivors were desperate enough to come out on their own. While the looters discussed their next move, Xiao Yong quietly observed everything from nearby. Shui innocently asked whether those people were bad guys. Xiao Yong nodded and reminded him they were exactly the same kind of people who had bullied his mother earlier. People like that had to be dealt with. Inside the building, Officer Lee instructed everyone to stay hidden and continue guarding the staircase while he carefully checked the situation outside. Sneaking over to a window, he looked down and counted 7 looters altogether. 3 of them were carrying guns. Before he could say anything else, a loud gunshot suddenly echoed through the area. Everyone inside immediately froze, wondering what had happened. Outside, one of the looters dropped dead after taking a bullet. The others looked around in complete confusion, unable to figure out where the shot had come from. Officer Lee quickly spotted the answer. Xiao Yong was advancing with rifle in his hand. Without slowing down, Xiao Yong opened fire again. Another thug took a clean shot to the head and collapsed on the spot. The remaining gunmen finally locked onto Xiao Yong's position and immediately returned fire with their pistols. But Xiao Yong kept walking straight toward them without the slightest hesitation. Bullet after bullet flew past him, yet none of them came close to hitting their target. Watching these trigger-happy amateurs spray bullets everywhere almost made him laugh. Spotting the gang leader hiding behind a concrete barrier, Xiao Yong fired back. His shot slammed into the cover instead of the man behind it. Thinking Xiao Yong had pinned himself down, the leader yelled for his men to keep shooting while Xiao Yong focused on him. One thug finally gathered enough courage to stand up and take Xiao Yong head-on. The moment he exposed himself, Xiao Yong instantly shifted his aim. A few shots rang out, and the thug's head exploded before he could even pull the trigger. Watching from behind cover, the leader smirked to himself. He assumed Xiao Yong had finally emptied his magazine. Feeling safe, he stepped out and aimed his handgun. Xiao Yong calmly met his eyes without taking a single step back. The instant the leader fired, Xiao Yong tilted his head just enough to avoid the bullet. Before the man could react, Xiao Yong grabbed the arm holding the pistol, twisted it toward its owner, pressed the barrel beneath his neck, and pulled the trigger. The shot went straight through the thug's head, ending the fight on the spot. Just like that, the entire squad outside was wiped out. Afterward, Xiao Yong searched the leader's body for anything useful before entering the building. Inside, a few surviving thugs rushed him in one last desperate attack. Xiao Yong didn't even bother moving from where he stood. 3 quick shots echoed through the hallway, and every attacker dropped where they stood. Watching the fight from nearby, Shui's eyes practically lit up. Xiao Yong had just become even more impressive in the kid's eyes. At that moment, a new system mission appeared. His next objective was to recruit the survivors gathered at Rongshan Garden, with rewards waiting upon completion. Xiao Yong then asked Officer Lee about the people they had just fought. Officer Lee explained they belonged to the Bichushanville settlement in the southern part of the city. He immediately called over 2 survivors wearing yellow jackets, Lu Cha and Chen Ji, asking them to explain the situation since they had escaped from the south themselves. The 2 men revealed that Beikushan Villas had become the strongest settlement in that area. The gang possessed weapons, plenty of supplies, and had absorbed almost every surviving group nearby. Hearing that made Xiao Yong pause. The description reminded him of something from his previous life. He wondered whether this was the very settlement controlled by Li Shushan and Qi Jin. He asked if Bikushan had become the only settlement left in the south. One of the men explained that several smaller settlements had existed before, but none of them could compete against people with firearms. The Beikushan gang systematically crushed every settlement they encountered, slaughtered roughly half the survivors, then took away the young women along with anyone willing to join their side. After hearing that, Xiao Yong became certain he knew exactly who was behind everything. Officer Lee noticed his reaction and asked what he meant. Instead of explaining further, Xiao Yong pointed at the handguns they had just recovered from the dead looters. He told Officer Lee and the others to keep those pistols, search the bodies for extra magazines, and handed over his own rifle along with 5 magazines for them to use. Xiao Yong explained that the Bishushan gang would definitely come looking for revenge, but with those weapons, defending against around 10 attackers shouldn't be a problem anymore. He instructed everyone to stay there for a few days while he reorganized things back at his own base. After that, he would personally return to deal with that garbage gang. One of the survivors stared at him in disbelief and asked if he seriously intended to fight Bikushan. According to him, they had dozens of armed men, maybe even more. Officer Lee also tried talking him out of it, suggesting it would be safer to abandon the area altogether. Xiao Yong calmly reassured him there was no reason to worry. He already had unfinished business with the Bikushan group anyway. He also revealed that in a few days he would return with a larger vehicle and evacuate everyone to the eastern side of the city near Old Tea Leaf City, where he was building a stronghold and would need more people to help. With everything settled, Xiao Yong casually said goodbye, reminded everyone to stay safe, and left together with Xiao Li and Shui. The scene then shifted to a much darker location. Corpses were scattered throughout the area while a lone guard stood watch outside the heavily fortified Bikushan settlement. Inside the mansion, the leaders of the gang were gathered for a meeting. Wayne Gay, the orange-haired leader, asked why nobody had returned with the supplies from the Jinyu Entertainment Center yet. Zhang Shang, the overweight man, confidently replied that he had already sent people to handle it and they should have been back by now. What none of them realized was that every single man they had sent was already dead. Another man named Kai looked toward Zhang Shang and reminded him that plenty of influential people had been living at Jinyu Mansion before the apocalypse. Raiding the entertainment center wasn't something they could do without creating enemies. Zhang Shang confidently replied that his men had already been ordered to bring back anyone they found alive. Wen Gei wasn't impressed in the slightest. His face darkened as he openly criticized Zhang Shang, frustrated that he hadn't managed to complete a single assignment properly. Feeling the pressure, Zhang Shang immediately lowered his head and promised that this operation would be handled without mistakes. Off to the side, Kai couldn't hide the smug grin on his face. Watching Zhang Shang get chewed out was apparently today's entertainment. After the meeting ended, Zhang Shang stepped outside to cool off. One of his lackeys noticed his miserable expression and cautiously asked what was wrong. Zhang Shang ignored the question and demanded to know whether the 7 men he had sent out had returned yet. The lackey hesitated before delivering the bad news. About an hour earlier, another group had gone to investigate, only to discover every member of that squad had been killed. The report completely stunned Zhang Shang. He couldn't believe that ordinary survivors from Rongsang Garden had somehow wiped out armed men. Panic quickly replaced his confidence. He immediately ordered Taozi to gather everyone capable of using weapons. This time, he refused to let the mission end in another disaster. Meanwhile, Xiao Yong finally returned to the fortress. The moment Shen Xion heard the vehicle approaching, she instantly realized Brother Yong was back. As Xiao Yong drove inside the safe zone, a system notification appeared, informing him that the mission had been completed successfully. Shen Xion happily welcomed him home, but Xiao Yong immediately noticed one familiar face was missing. Yi Ming was nowhere to be seen. Instead of being surprised, Xiao Yong was actually relieved. His suspicion about that snake had been right all along. Everyone else was left shocked after learning Xiao Yong had already been wary of Yi Ming from the very beginning. Xiao Yong then pointed toward Xiao Li and Shui, asking everyone to take them to their rooms before meeting him at the infirmary. Once everyone had gathered, Xiao Yong explained that he had known from the start someone among Jiang Qi's friends had bad intentions. While he hadn't been completely certain it was Yi Ming specifically, he had never trusted that group. Without another word, Xiao Yong tossed a firearm toward Jiang Qi. Catching it, Jiang Qi checked the ammunition and immediately realized every round inside was rubber. Grandpa Li suddenly understood what Xiao Yong had done and quickly asked about Chen, who was still inside the infirmary. Xiao Yong calmly walked over and explained that Chen wasn't an ordinary zombie. He was actually a rare mutant, something Xiao Yong had already confirmed earlier. He revealed that he had once asked Chen to blink 3 times, and Chen had actually followed the instruction. According to Xiao Yong, after the apocalypse, people infected by otherworldly sources had a very small chance of mutating into intelligent variants instead of ordinary zombies. Those rare mutants possessed much greater intelligence and potential than normal infected. Some could even retain fragments of their memories from before infection. Chen was an exceptionally rare case even among those mutants. Xiao Yong opened the infirmary door, revealing Chen standing beside the body of Yi Ming, the troublemaker who had caused everyone endless headaches. The moment Chen saw Xiao Yong, he casually raised a hand in greeting. Xiao Yong simply told him to stop holding back because there was no reason to keep that snake's corpse around anymore. Chen immediately grabbed Yi Ming's body and began dragging it away. Curious, Jiang Qi called out to his old friend, asking whether Chen still remembered him. Chen suddenly stopped walking and slowly turned toward him. Nobody could tell what was going through the mutant's mind. Without warning, Chen swung his arm toward Jiang Qi. Jiang Qi barely dodged in time before realizing Chen wasn't seriously trying to kill him. It looked more like the mutant was deliberately messing with him, making Jiang Qi sigh that even after becoming a zombie, Chen still hadn't lost that habit. Later, Xiaoyong opened his system interface and was greeted with an unexpected notification. He had unlocked a hidden achievement called Mutual Companion, earning additional system points as a reward. Even Xiaoyong hadn't expected to trigger a hidden achievement, so the extra points came as a welcome surprise. Curious whether the shop had updated, he opened it and immediately noticed a brand new level 2 item called the high-tech supply box. It was something he had never seen before, but the price tag of 50 system points made him hesitate. Rather than spending his points immediately, Xiaoyong decided to open the 2 unopened supply boxes already sitting in his inventory. The first, the Lifesaver supply box, rewarded him with an interdimensional infection blocker, an item capable of preventing otherworldly infections before they fully took hold, although it couldn't reverse a mutation that had already been completed. The second, the armed deterrent supply box, gave him an even bigger surprise. Inside was a powerful Barrett M82 sniper rifle along with a supply of ammunition. Xiaoyong couldn't help but be impressed by his luck. Pulling a Barrett M82 from a level 1 supply box was already an incredible haul, but the interdimensional infection blocker was just as valuable. The possibility of preventing someone from fully turning into a zombie made the item incredibly important. With rewards like these already in his hands, Xiaoyong became even more eager to see what the level 2 supply box contained. Even so, he forced himself to stay focused. The next priority was completing his mission by recruiting the survivors at Rangshan Garden, and he planned to handle that the following day. Outside the fortress, Chen dragged Yiming's body beyond the perimeter and tossed it away. There was no place inside their stronghold for a traitorous snake even after death. The next morning, everyone assembled in the training grounds. Young and old alike stood ready with weapons in hand. Xiaoyong announced that from now on, everyone would spend at least 1 hour every day practicing their shooting. Soon, gunfire echoed through the training area as bottles were lined up for target practice. Every successful hit produced a bright flash showing the bullets striking their targets. After watching everyone train, Xiaoyong turned to Uncle Shang and instructed him to have Jiang Qi organize the group and continue clearing additional rooms because he intended to bring the survivors from Rangshan Garden back to the fortress that day. Grandpa Li immediately agreed and prepared to carry out the plan. Xiaoyong also ordered Chen to accompany him, knowing the mutant's strength would be extremely useful during the escort mission. Before long, they located an abandoned bus that had become a nest for wandering zombies. Xiaoyong quickly cleared the infected surrounding it while Chen helped by throwing the remaining zombies out of the vehicle. Once the bus was secure, Xiaoyong handed Chen the keys. He told him there was no need to keep wearing the mask for now since nobody else was around, but reminded him to put it back on once they reached Rangshan Garden, so he wouldn't frighten the survivors. Chen acknowledged the order with a low growl. Meanwhile, over at Bikushan, Jiang Shang finished preparing his own operation. This time, he personally led a group of armed men toward Rangshan Garden. After yesterday's humiliation, he refused to believe he would fail again. With more men and plenty of weapons, he was convinced victory was already in his hands. Their truck roared out of the compound and headed straight for its destination. At the same time, Xiaoyong climbed into the driver's seat of the newly captured bus and started driving toward Rangshan Garden. A group of zombies wandered across the road ahead, but Xiaoyong didn't even consider slowing down. The heavy bus plowed straight through them before continuing forward. Using his enhanced reflexes, he skillfully maneuvered around the countless abandoned vehicles scattered across the highway, weaving through the blocked roads without losing momentum. Back at Rangshan Garden, everything looked quiet from the outside. Inside Building 8, Officer Li and the other survivors were eating small portions of food, carefully rationing their remaining supplies. Their meal was interrupted by the sound of an engine approaching from outside. Brad immediately became excited and guessed brother Xiaoyong had returned to rescue them. Officer Li didn't jump to conclusions. He grabbed his AK-47, motioned for everyone to stay quiet, and cautiously moved toward a window. Slowly raising his head just enough to see outside, he immediately realized the approaching vehicle wasn't Xiaoyong's. It was a group of armed scumbags looking for revenge. Outside, the Bikushan gang checked their weapons while confirming they had arrived at Building 8. After identifying the correct location, Jiang Shang ordered everyone to move in. Inside, the large survivor tensed up. Just when everyone had started believing they would soon be leaving with Xiaoyong, the Bikushan gang showed up instead. The father raised the pistol Xiaoyong had left behind, ready to face the same morons who still hadn't learned their lesson. Now that the survivors had a few firearms of their own, several of them started feeling much more confident. Officer Lee immediately shut that attitude down, warning everyone not to get overconfident just because they finally had guns. Outside the building, the Baekyu Shun gang had assembled an overwhelming force that completely outnumbered the survivors. Officer Lee reminded everyone to stick to the plan before quietly making his way up to the rooftop to prepare the ambush. Below, Jiang Shang's men stopped once they reached what they considered the perfect firing distance. Following Jiang Shang's command, every armed thug raised their rifles and carefully aimed at the countless windows of Building 8. The father happened to peek outside at the worst possible moment. The instant he saw dozens of weapons pointed their way, he shouted for everyone to get down and take cover. A split second later, the peaceful morning exploded into chaos as automatic gunfire ripped through the building. Window after window shattered under the barrage, forcing the father to retreat deeper inside. Once the opening volley ended, Jiang Shang grabbed a megaphone while ordering the rest of his men to keep their sights trained on every broken window. Anyone foolish enough to show their face was supposed to be shot immediately. Wearing a smug grin, Jiang Shang began shouting through the megaphone, demanding the survivors listen to his terms. He didn't even finish his first sentence. A rifle shot rang out, and the thug standing beside him had his skull pierced instantly. His body collapsed before anyone even processed what had happened. The entire group froze. None of them had expected a hidden marksman waiting for them. Moments later, another thug cried out after taking a clean shot to the leg. Up on the rooftop, Officer Lee remained perfectly positioned behind cover with a clear view of the battlefield. The Baekyu Shun gang had completely underestimated the survivors. According to the information they received, Building 8 only had a single pistol. Even after collecting weapons from the men who had died previously, they believed the survivors could only have a handful of firearms. Instead, they were being pinned down by accurate rifle fire. The surviving thugs immediately looked toward Jiang Shang, waiting for orders. Their confidence had disappeared the moment bullets started dropping people around them. Jiang Shang ordered a retreat. Unfortunately, his brain-dead crew interpreted that order in the worst possible way. Instead of withdrawing together, they all bolted in different directions like terrified chickens. Officer Lee took full advantage of the chaos. One shot after another found its mark as fleeing thugs collapsed across the street. Watching his own men get picked off, Jiang Shang angrily cursed them for running around without thinking. After counting to 3, the remaining survivors of his squad finally managed a more organized retreat because at that point, running literally meant staying alive. While his men scrambled through the open streets, Jiang Shang stayed hidden behind cover for as long as possible. Officer Lee calmly adjusted his aim and continued dropping retreating enemies with accurate shots as they tried escaping. From the very beginning, Jiang Shang had been perfectly willing to use his own men as disposable shields until the rifle on the rooftop eventually ran dry. A certified scumbag through and through. Eventually, Officer Lee exhausted his magazine and had to reload. That brief opening was all Jiang Shang needed. He sprinted toward his vehicle and successfully reached the driver's seat. Out of the entire attacking force, only 4 men remained alive. Sadly for the last thug still running behind them, Jiang Shang had absolutely no intention of waiting. Rather than risk another bullet, he drove off immediately. A high-powered shot caught the abandoned thug before he could reach the truck, dropping him where he stood. The remaining 2 survivors lying inside the cargo bed ducked as low as they possibly could, terrified they would be next. Meanwhile, on another road, Xiao Yong continued driving the captured bus toward Rangshan Garden. He smoothly navigated around abandoned vehicles blocking the highway without slowing down. During the trip, another vehicle suddenly sped past in the opposite direction. Xiao Yong noticed it immediately but chose not to chase it. Right now, completing his mission and earning system points mattered more than anything else. After several more minutes of driving, he finally arrived outside Building 8. Xiao Yong and Chen stepped off the bus and immediately saw the aftermath of the battle. Bullet-riddled bodies were scattered across the ground. Xiao Yong quickly realized the rifle he had left behind had been put to excellent use. He also connected the dots and figured the speeding vehicle he had passed earlier must have been carrying the surviving raiders. Standing beside him, Chen stared at the fresh corpses littering the street. The mutant let out a low growl as he began drooling at the sight of so many freshly killed humans. Xiao Yong looked at Chen and smiled before asking if he was hungry. Without hesitation, he gave the mutant permission to feast on the freshly killed thugs. After all, it was better for Chen to benefit from those bodies than to leave them for wandering zombies. The moment Chen realized he had permission, his face lit up with excitement. Xiao Yong simply told him to enjoy himself and meet everyone under Building 8 once he was finished. Chen wasted absolutely no time. He rushed to the nearest corpse and sank his teeth into the dead thug's neck, eagerly devouring flesh and blood. As soon as he swallowed his first bite, a powerful surge spread throughout his body, making the meal seem to energize him. Meanwhile, Xiao Yong casually walked across the battlefield, calmly examining the aftermath. Judging by by how efficiently the attackers had been eliminated, he couldn't help being impressed by how decisive Officer Lee had been during the firefight. Up above, Brad cautiously peeked through one of the shattered windows. The moment he recognized Xiao Yong, his face instantly brightened. After confirming it really was him, the other survivors finally stepped out and eagerly waved him over. Led by Officer Lee, everyone gathered downstairs to welcome him. Officer Lee sincerely thanked Xiao Yong for leaving behind the rifle that had saved all of their lives. He also revealed that before retiring, he had been an expert marksman, which explained why the weapon had been put to such good use. Their reunion was suddenly interrupted by a deep growl echoing through the street, followed by slow approaching footsteps. Everyone instinctively turned toward the sound and immediately froze when they saw Chen limping toward them. Officer Lee reacted first, raising the AK-47 and aiming directly at the approaching zombie. Xiao Yong calmly lowered the rifle and assured everyone there was nothing to worry about because Chen was on their side. Hearing that only made the survivors stare at him in disbelief. From their perspective, trusting a zombie sounded completely insane. Xiao Yong ignored their reactions and simply told Chen to finish eating the remaining dead thugs nearby before joining them. Officer Lee couldn't hide his shock anymore. He asked whether Xiao Yong could somehow communicate with zombies. Xiao Yong explained that Chen wasn't an ordinary zombie and admitted the full explanation was complicated. He suggested everyone board the bus first, promising to explain everything during the trip. As the group walked toward the bus, Xiao Yong reminded Chen to finish eating quickly before catching up. Chen casually gave him an okay gesture without interrupting his meal. After cleaning up every dead Beichushan thug, Chen pulled out his specialized mask and put it back on by himself before walking toward the bus. The survivors couldn't stop staring. Brad especially struggled to believe what he had just witnessed. A zombie that could think clearly enough to put on its own mask completely shattered everything he thought he knew. Xiao Yong jokingly warned him not to call it a muzzle in front of Chen unless he wanted to get smacked. Surprisingly, Brad was starting to think the mutant zombie was actually pretty cool. After finishing his feast, Chen climbed onto the bus like any other passenger. Having just consumed so many bodies, his increased weight caused the entire bus to lean noticeably the moment he stepped inside. This time, Chen even managed to mumble a few slurred words while handing the key for his mask back to Xiao Yong. Even Xiao Yong looked genuinely surprised. He hadn't expected Chen to regain the ability to speak this quickly, even if it was only a single word. After consuming 6 corpses, Chen was clearly continuing to evolve. Still, Xiao Yong kept his attention on the bigger objective. His priority remained getting everyone safely back to the fortress so he could claim his mission rewards and continue strengthening the settlement. Climbing into the driver's seat, he told everyone to hold on before pulling away at full speed. Meanwhile, back at Bishiosen headquarters, Jiang Sang returned to report another complete failure. The moment he finished explaining what had happened, he was chewed out once again for accomplishing absolutely nothing. Trying to save himself, Jiang Shang argued that the intelligence they received had been completely wrong. Nobody had warned him that the survivors possessed automatic rifles. Boss Wenge wasn't buying a single word of it. As far as he was concerned, it made no sense for an ordinary small-town police officer to somehow have access to an automatic rifle, and he refused to accept that excuse. Boss Wenge looked completely offended. To him, Jiang Shang's explanation sounded like the dumbest excuse imaginable. Jiang Shang stubbornly stood his ground anyway, insisting they send someone to inspect the battlefield if they didn't believe him. Before he could say anything else, Wenge's right-hand man lost his patience and kicked him straight to the floor. Jiang Shang immediately got the message. It was time to shut up and leave before things got even worse. The moment he was gone, the right-hand man admitted he had been sick of Jiang Shang's incompetence for a long time. After costing the gang so many men, killing him outright was starting to sound like a perfectly reasonable solution. Another Bikushan executive, Boss Shu, immediately called him out. According to him, that wasn't the real reason at all. The right-hand man had been eyeing Jiang Shang's girlfriend for quite some time. With a shameless grin, Boss Shu even suggested they simply share the woman among themselves like she was property. Wenge smiled after hearing that proposal. He didn't reject it, but calmly said there was no need to rush. They should wait until the timing was perfect. What none of them realized was that Jiang Shang hadn't actually left. He was standing near the entrance, silently listening to every disgusting word. Hearing his own allies plotting behind his back made his expression completely darken. A few hours later, Jiang Shang returned to his luxurious house and completely lost his temper. Unable to vent his frustration anywhere else, he started smashing up his own home like an overgrown man-child throwing a tantrum. Hearing the commotion, his girlfriend hurried over, trying to calm him down. Instead of explaining everything, Jiang Shang simply told her to start packing because they had to leave as soon as possible. She asked where they were going, but he couldn't give her an answer. The only thing he knew for certain was that staying there was no longer safe. He immediately called for his trusted subordinate, Qingzi. The loyal lackey rushed in without delay. Jiang Shang ordered him to gather every remaining capable fighter because they would be leaving at midnight. His girlfriend watched the whole exchange with growing unease. It was obvious something had gone terribly wrong. Meanwhile, back at the place that actually mattered, Xiao Yong drove the captured bus into one of the indoor parking areas inside his fortress. The survivors from Building 8 stepped off the vehicle one after another and couldn't hide their amazement as they looked around the massive stronghold Xiao Yong had built. As soon as everyone arrived safely, the survivor recruitment mission was officially completed. Although the objective had only required rescuing 5 people, Xiao Yong successfully brought back 8 survivors. Along with the mission reward of 25 system points, he also received a bonus 5 points for exceeding the objective, bringing his total up to 66 points. Turning toward Chen, Xiao Yong informed his mutant companion that the following night they would head to the southern district together for a 2-man operation. Officer Li happened to overhear the conversation and curiously asked what was waiting for them there. Xiao Yong simply replied that he still had some unfinished grudges with the people controlling Beishan villas. Later that night, Xiao Yong returned to his room and focused his attention on the level 2 high-tech supply box. Now that he finally had enough points, he purchased it without hesitation. The moment the transaction went through, 50 system points disappeared, leaving him with only 16. A bright light surrounded him as the crate activated. After spending such a huge amount of points, Xiao Yong could only hope the reward would be worth it. Fortunately, the level 2 high-tech supply box didn't disappoint. Whatever was waiting inside looked like it was about to make that expensive purchase completely worthwhile. The gacha god seriously smiled on Xiao Yong this time. Inside the level 2 crate was a massive physical enhancement serum, capable of increasing his physical stats by a whopping 20 points. Our boy didn't waste even a second. He slammed the oversized syringe straight into his arm and let the serum flood through his body. The upgrade hurt like absolute hell, but the results were worth every second of it. His physical stat instantly climbed to 33, putting him at well over 6 times the strength of an average person. It wasn't just raw power either. Every one of his senses received a ridiculous upgrade. A mosquito happened to buzz across the room, and Xiao Yong casually caught the tiny menace by its stinger before it could even react. His reflexes and hand-eye coordination had reached another level, making future fights even more one-sided. Satisfied with the upgrade, he released the unlucky mosquito and let it fly away. By sunset, Xiao Yong performed his routine patrol around the fortress alongside Brother Chen. Passing through one of the open training yards, he noticed Officer Li supervising everyone's marksmanship practice. Seeing that the training was in capable hands, Xiao Yong officially asked Officer Li to take over firearm instruction from now on, since he was clearly the best marksman available. Officer Li gladly accepted without hesitation, happy to contribute where he excelled. With everything settled, Xiao Yong and Brother Chen boarded the bus and headed toward the southern district. While their oversized bus barreled through the roads faster than any city bus had business driving, chaos was unfolding elsewhere. Jiang Shang had already sensed the knife hanging over his neck and secretly gathered his remaining men to escape under the cover of darkness. Unfortunately for him, his brilliant escape plan lasted about 5 minutes. Before they could leave, the leaders of Beikushan Villes rolled straight into his driveway, sealing every possible exit. Sitting inside the lead vehicle were the gang's top bosses, along with one very familiar face. Boss Shu stepped out wearing a smug grin while holding a gun and calmly asked Jiang Shang why he was trying to disappear in the middle of the night. Thinking fast, Jiang Shang immediately spun another lie, claiming he was simply taking his men to Rangshan Garden to finish the unfinished mission while everyone else was asleep. It would have been a decent excuse if they hadn't already caught one of his own men. His subordinate Qingzi's beaten body was tossed right in front of him, making the lie fall apart before it even finished. Even then, Jiang Shang shamelessly pretended he'd never seen the corpse in his life. The performance was so pathetic it would have lost an acting contest against a brick wall. Boss Shu finally got tired of listening and casually ordered his men to open fire. Bullets instantly tore through Jiang Shang's followers as they dropped one after another. Even while watching his crew get erased, Jiang Shang stubbornly kept pretending he knew nothing. Boss Shu decided to end the comedy by telling him to look inside the passenger seat of their vehicle. The second Jiang Shang saw Kui Jin sitting there, everything clicked. The same woman who had betrayed Xiao Yong had now sold him out too. Boss Kai couldn't help laughing. Jiang Shang kept acting clueless, even though Kui Jin had already handed over every detail of their escape plan. Honestly, he should have seen it coming. Someone willing to stab one person in the back usually doesn't retire after the first attempt. With the truth exposed, Boss Kai turned toward Boss Wen Gei for the final decision. The boss silently gave permission to execute Jiang Shang. They wrapped a rope around his neck and had one of their strongest men slowly pull until the fat bastard finally stopped breathing. It was a slow, ugly death, and when it was over, they left his body hanging right outside his own mansion as a warning. Later that same night, Xiao Yong's blue bus quietly stopped nearby. He and Brother Chen approached the mansion on foot, staying hidden the entire way. As soon as they reached the entrance, Xiao Yong realized somebody had beaten him to the punch. Jiang Shang was already hanging from the gate. Even though the scumbag absolutely earned that ending, Xiao Yong looked slightly disappointed he didn't get to settle the score personally. With a flick of his finger, he launched a small pebble that sliced through the rope, sending the corpse crashing onto the ground. If someone else already claimed the kill, then he'd just collect interest elsewhere. Meanwhile, inside Beikushan's headquarters, ugly sounds echoed from the penthouse. Kuai Jin had once again abandoned one side, hoping a bigger predator would protect her, but this time she jumped straight into a den full of complete degenerates. To Boss Wenge and Boss Kai, she wasn't an ally at all. She was nothing more than another reward to pass around. While those disgusting bastards entertained themselves, Justice quietly arrived downstairs. Boss Kai happened to glance out the penthouse window and immediately noticed something was wrong. Every guard outside was already lying dead. Before anyone could react, loud pounding echoed from the front door. The knocks were loud enough to grab everyone's attention, but they were never the real attack. The loud knocking at the front door was nothing but a distraction. The real threat had already chosen a far deadlier entrance. Xiaoyang slipped in through the highest window with a knife in hand, looking like death had finally clocked in for work. Before Boss Kai even realized what was happening, he felt a freezing blade resting against his neck. He didn't even get the chance to spit out another excuse. Xiaoyang sliced his throat clean open, leaving the bastard choking on his own blood before collapsing where he stood. One parasite down, one left. Wenge stand there completely dumbfounded. A second ago, he was busy acting like the king of the room. The next, his partner was already decorating the floor. Xiaoyang didn't waste another heartbeat, and the blade buried itself perfectly, slicing open his neck. The fat scumbag dropped where he stood before he even had time to process what happened. Watching both bosses fall in seconds, Kuai Jin let out a terrified scream. Unlike every fantasy running through her head before, she knew exactly why Xiaoyang had come. It definitely wasn't to rescue her. If anything, seeing him only made her panic even harder. Xiaoyang shot her a cold, mocking look before calmly walking toward the door. As he unlocked it, the door slowly swung open. Zhen Shang was gone now. What stood there instead was a mindless zombie driven only by hunger. The creature lunged straight for Kuai Jin, sinking its teeth into her neck again and again. She screamed and begged for help, but nobody in that room cared anymore. Xiaoyang simply watched long enough to know his revenge was complete before shutting the door, leaving the two people who had betrayed and killed him in his previous life to settle their own ending together. Outside, Xiaoyang discussed cleanup with Brother Chen. The dead guards scattered around the compound would have made a decent meal for his mutant companion, but Chen patted his stomach with a disappointed growl. After stuffing himself earlier, he only had room for one more body tonight. Better one than none. While Chen enjoyed his late-night snack, Xiaoyang's enhanced hearing suddenly picked up voices coming from a nearby building. Curious, he quietly made his way over. Inside, a group of terrified survivors was being held captive. Watching over them were a creepy thug and a chef who looked way too comfortable discussing people like menu items. The thug grabbed a little girl, deciding she'd make the next victim, but the chef immediately rejected the choice. She was too skinny for his taste. Instead, he pointed at a chubby little boy clinging to his crying mother. The chef dragged the terrified child away, while the mother desperately begged him to stop. Growing impatient, the chef knocked her aside with a single swing. She cried and pleaded with the other survivors to help, but everyone else stayed silent, relieved they weren't the ones being dragged away. Before the nightmare could continue, thunderous gunshots ripped through the entrance. 3 huge bullet holes suddenly appeared in the front door. The guards instantly grabbed their weapons. As far as they knew, only the bosses possessed firearms powerful enough to leave damage like that. At least the interruption bought the little boy a few extra moments. The damaged door slowly creaked open, and every guard aimed at the entrance, waiting for something to appear. Nothing happened. Growing impatient, the chef ordered one of his men to check outside. The unlucky guard carefully stepped toward the doorway, and immediately found Brother Chen's hand wrapped around his neck. Without even revealing himself, the mutant quietly eliminated the first target. Catching only a glimpse of Chen's arm, the remaining guards immediately assumed zombies had broken inside. They opened fire in complete panic, spraying bullets everywhere while hitting absolutely nothing. Brother Chen casually kept baiting them around the room, darting between cover, while their terrible aim wasted every round they had. The moment the shooting finally stopped, Brother Chen burst through one of the boarded-up windows, smashing the wooden barricade apart with brute force. He locked onto the chef standing in the center of the room and crashed into him without slowing down, snapping the man's neck mid-charge. Using that momentum, he launched himself straight into the next thug. Within seconds, the entire group of amateur gunmen was wiped out one after another. When the rampage finally ended, only the terrified survivors remained, frozen in place. They couldn't understand why the zombie had butchered every thug yet completely ignored them. A few moments later, Xiaoyang casually walked into the room as if he had just arrived after missing all the fun. He complimented Brother Chen on the clean takedown, especially considering he managed to pull it off while wearing his mask. Brother Chen proudly replied that the mask made him look even cooler while fighting. Honestly, for once, the zombie wasn't exaggerating. Brother Chen for president. Hearing a zombie actually speak only made the rescued survivors panic even harder. The kids clung to their mothers while everyone instinctively backed away from the mutant. Xiaoyang stepped in before anyone completely lost it, calmly assuring them that Brother Chen wouldn't hurt anybody. The little girl immediately shook her head. She had already seen monsters just like him slaughter people without hesitation. That caught Xiaoyang's attention instantly. He crouched down and gently asked what she meant by super monsters. Her mother explained that they had encountered another strange mutant in Day City on the eastern side of town. Xiaoyang's expression became noticeably serious. According to what he knew, mutants like that weren't supposed to start appearing for another month or two. Even worse, Day City wasn't far from Old Tea Leaf Town where his fortress was located. He immediately warned Brother Chen that another rare mutant could already be operating nearby. Depending on the individual, these evolved zombies could retain different levels of intelligence and memories, making them far more dangerous than ordinary infected. On the other hand, failed mutations usually turned into bloodthirsty lunatics. Hearing that made Brother Chen visibly uneasy about his own future. Xiaoyang immediately reassured him that he had been lucky enough to keep his sanity, and as long as they stayed together, he wouldn't lose himself. Turning back to the survivors, Xiaoyang asked whether anyone else was still alive inside the villa. They explained that some people were imprisoned inside the sales office, while others had been locked underground in the basement. Since it was closest, Xiaoyang led everyone toward the basement first. The moment he pulled open the heavy steel door, the stench of blood slammed straight into everyone's faces. Even the survivors who had already witnessed plenty of horrors instinctively recoiled. The room beyond was soaked in blood and littered with butchered bodies. It didn't take a genius to understand what this place really was. Baekyushan hadn't simply been killing people, they'd been processing them. Suddenly everything made sense. There was a reason no survivor settlements had lasted anywhere near this district. One survivor quietly mentioned that they had often seen trucks transporting unknown quantities of meat outside the city. Looking at the sheer number of bodies left behind, Xiaoyang realized these animals had probably been running an even darker business than anyone imagined. Since nobody could realistically survive inside that basement, the only place left to search was the sales office roughly a kilometer away near the south gate. According to the survivors, newly captured people were always locked there first before being sorted. Anyone considered useless eventually disappeared into the slaughterhouse. As Xiaoyang processed the information, the system suddenly issued him a brand new mission series called Subpar Utopia, ordering him to continuously expand and improve the settlement's overall community rating. Meanwhile, the guards stationed at the sales office remained completely oblivious to the fact that their entire organization had already collapsed. Hearing distant gunfire earlier, they simply assumed the bosses were amusing themselves by using living people for target practice again. Under the cover of darkness, Brother Chen quietly went to work. The guards barely had time to react before he cleaned them up one after another with brutal efficiency. Inside the building, several frightened women remained imprisoned. Judging from the state of the room and the scattered clothing lying everywhere, nobody needed an explanation for what those scumbags had been doing. Some of the women had already given up hope, while others still clung to the smallest shred of it. When the door finally opened, instead of another disgusting thug, Xiaoyang calmly walked inside. He simply told them they were free and invited them to come with him. As they stepped outside, they were greeted by the sight of dead criminals covering the ground instead of more captors. Xiaoyang promised everyone a real place to live instead of this nightmare. The only condition was simple: everyone would contribute to building and improving the community together. After everything they had suffered inside Baekyushan, that sounded like paradise. With everyone gathered, Xiaoyang led the survivors back to the bus. Thankfully, this time he had brought a vehicle large enough for the entire group. Before long, they arrived back at the fortress where Xian and Jiangqi were already waiting for his return. Since Xiaoyang stopped the bus outside instead of driving directly through the gates, Jiangqi immediately realized there was a reason. Xiaoyang introduced the rescued survivors to the fortress, but made one thing perfectly clear: nobody would enter the main compound until they had been properly vetted. The survivors completely understood. In times like these, blind trust was just another way to get everyone killed. For now, they would stay inside prefabricated housing protected by iron fencing outside the main fortress. It wasn't nearly as secure as the central base, but compared to the hell they had escaped, it felt like a luxury resort. Xiaoyang explained that Old Tea Leaf Town still had plenty of unfinished buildings and empty land, and as more people joined, construction would continue until the settlement became even stronger. Hearing that, the rescued survivors sincerely thanked the man who had pulled them out of absolute hell. The night quietly came to an end, and with sunrise came fresh trouble. A convoy of cars and trucks rolled straight toward the entrance of Baekyushan Villas. Leading the group was the female boss herself. She had already grown suspicious after Zhang Sheng and every subordinate she had assigned stopped answering their phones. By the time the convoy reached the gate, she knew something had gone seriously wrong. The convoy rolled to a stop, and Lady Boss Ru stepped out to inspect Baekyushan Villas herself. The second she entered the compound, she was greeted by blood, mangled corpses, and the stench of death hanging over the entire place. Overnight, everyone who had died had already reanimated into mindless zombies. One of them happened to be Jiang Sheng. The former wannabe boss immediately lunged at the living the moment he spotted them. Lady Boss Ru didn't even bother treating the undead like actual threats. She casually tore through them with her bare hands before pulling out a knife and hacking the zombies apart piece by piece, leaving limbs scattered everywhere. After sweeping the compound, the conclusion was obvious. Every leader they had stationed there was dead. Their entire human meat operation had taken a massive hit, and somebody was going to pay for it. Before restarting the business, they first had to hunt down whoever had destroyed Baekushan villas. After searching every corner of the compound, her men reported that not a single living person remained. The only silver lining was that enough human meat was still left for today's shipment. They simply needed to load everything into the truck. While the crew stuffed garbage bags filled with human meat into the cargo bed, Lady Boss Rue surveyed the ground outside. Fresh tire tracks stretched away from the villa. A cold smile crossed her face. Whoever ruined their operation had just left behind a trail pointing directly to them. Back at the fortress, Xiaoyong was still trying to figure out the requirements behind the community expansion mission. Even after bringing in a large number of survivors, the settlement score stubbornly remained at only 2 points. Population alone clearly wasn't enough. Thankfully, he had more than enough land to continue expanding. Looking back, buying this property from that arrogant seller had accidentally become one of his smartest decisions. Still, another issue demanded attention first. The mysterious rare mutant that had appeared in the nearby city. Xiaoyong, Shen, and Zhang Qi headed over to the prefab housing area where the newly rescued survivors greeted him with genuine gratitude. Some of them even knelt to thank the man who had saved their lives. Xiaoyong quickly got to the point and asked the mother and daughter about the super mutant they had mentioned earlier. The woman explained that they first encountered it inside Horenfa Market in Day City. Their group had gone there searching for supplies, only to stumble into the monster instead. Several people died on the spot. She barely managed to grab her daughter and escape during the chaos. After getting separated from everyone else, they ran non-stop until reaching Baekushan Villas, believing they had finally escaped, only to walk straight into something even worse. Now that Xiaoyong had the exact location, he immediately headed for his vehicle. Xian and Zhang Qi both tried convincing him to stay. They already had enough supplies, so risking his life wasn't necessary. Xiaoyong simply shook his head. He wasn't going there to loot food. Horenfa Market was less than 2 kilometers from the fortress. Leaving a dangerous mutant that close to home would be asking for trouble later. Even the woman who had barely escaped the creature begged him not to go, but Xiaoyong calmly assured everyone he knew exactly what he was doing. This mission only required one partner, Brother Chen. Meanwhile, over at Horenfa Market, another survivor group had arrived looking for supplies. Spotting the supermarket, they immediately got excited, hoping it would solve their food problems. After cautiously entering, they found the interior completely dark. As their eyes adjusted, they realized the place had already been looted before, but plenty of supplies still remained. Staying disciplined, the group moved together while deliberately making small noises to flush out hidden zombies or other survivors. It worked. A handful of wandering zombies emerged from the darkness. Unlike amateurs, these survivors stayed calm and dealt with the infected through clean teamwork, eliminating each zombie without anyone getting hurt. Seeing only a few undead made several members relax, figuring the main horde must have chased after whoever looted the supermarket before them. Even then, their leader reminded everyone to stay alert as they spread out to continue scavenging. However, another pair of eyes watched every movement. A far more intelligent predator patiently observed from the darkness, waiting like a hunter watching prey wander willingly into its trap. Completely unaware, the scavengers pushed deeper into the supermarket. Some were already celebrating after discovering enough supplies to keep them alive for years. Their leader finally relaxed for the first time after spotting a display of mattresses and happily flopped onto one of the soft beds. A few teammates even joked that they might as well settle down inside the supermarket, since it practically had everything they needed. Yeah, relaxing in the middle of monster territory usually isn't the survival strategy that ages well. While the group searched through the abandoned supermarket, 2 of the core members stepped outside for a smoke. Even they admitted this place wasn't a smart spot to settle down. There were way too many entrances to defend, and a supermarket packed with supplies was basically a giant neon sign screaming, "Come rob us." Luckily, they had already spotted a nearby 2-story building that looked much easier to fortify. Sadly, making future housing plans only works if you're still breathing tomorrow. Hidden in the darkness, the hunter finally made its move. The super mutant stepped out of the shadows and began its hunt. One of the survivors barely managed to scream for help before sprinting back toward the supermarket, but trying to outrun a mutant was about as effective as racing a sports car on a bicycle. The creature's claws ripped straight through the man's back and burst out of his chest before it casually tore him apart like wet cardboard. The entire group froze in horror until someone finally yelled for everyone to retreat. Their legs obeyed, but panic had already won. One by one, the slowest runners were caught first. Every desperate step was fueled by pure survival instinct, yet the monster stayed glued to their backs, cutting them down one after another. Within seconds, only the group's female leader remained alive. She sprinted toward the exit with everything she had left, finally spotting daylight just beyond the doors. She pushed even harder. Unfortunately, trying to outrun death in high heels is a pretty terrible life choice. The mutant loomed over her, savoring every ounce of fear on her face. She shut her eyes and threw her arms up, expecting to become the next meal. Instead, when she looked again, that was not same mutant. This one happened to be wearing a ridiculously cool mask. Yeah, Brother Chan had arrived. Xiaoyong calmly followed behind and told her not to be afraid. They had arrived just in time. To her surprise, she immediately recognized him as the young man who had purchased that massive piece of land from her agency before everything fell apart. Xiaoyong recognized her too. If he remembered correctly, her name was Xiaoning. Their reunion didn't last long because the sound of flesh tearing echoed through the supermarket. Xiaoning hurriedly warned him about the monster inside, but Xiaoyong casually assured her that the situation was already being handled. Looking back, she watched two abnormal monsters facing each other. The supermarket mutant immediately viewed Brother Chung as another predator competing for territory, while Brother Chung simply looked at the guy like another obstacle that needed to get flattened. It was the first time either mutant had encountered another of their own kind, and both seemed eager to find out who hit harder. The supermarket mutant attacked first, swinging its unnaturally long claws and barely missing Brother Chung by inches. Judging by that creepy grin, the freak was probably wondering if eating another mutant would speed up his evolution. Brother Chung answered with a single roaring punch that slammed the mutant's head so hard into the tiled floor, it practically introduced itself to the foundation. That knocked the clown attitude right out of him. Brother Chung immediately lifted his foot, fully prepared to stomp the mutant into next week. Unfortunately, the supermarket mutant reacted fast enough to spring away at the last second. Still laughing like a complete lunatic, the creature bragged that all the humans it had eaten were making it stronger every single day. Brother Chung instantly sensed another attack coming. The mutant lunged again, and the two monsters crashed into each other, trading blow after blow so quickly their fists became blurs. Watching the fight, Zhang Qi started worrying. Xiaoyong, however, was thinking about something completely different. He was glad they had come today. If this mutant had been allowed to keep feeding much longer, dealing with it later would have been a nightmare. Deciding the match had gone on long enough, Xiaoyong stepped forward and casually materialized an AK-47 in his hands. He calmly told Brother Chung to pin the mutant down for just 1 second so they could finish this. Reliable as always, Brother Chung immediately followed the order and shifted his focus to locking the supermarket mutant in place, stopping the speed freak from slipping away again. The mall echoed with gunfire as a single round punched straight through the super mutant's forehead, cracking its skull and turning its brains into mush. Any normal zombie would have clocked out right there, but this freak refused to read the memo. Instead of dropping, it locked its eyes on the guy holding the rifle. Zhang Qi couldn't believe what he had seen. A clean headshot had barely slowed the monster down. Xiaoyong didn't waste time questioning it. If one bullet wasn't enough, then the whole magazine could have a conversation with it. He switched to full auto and unloaded without mercy. High-caliber rounds ripped chunks out of the mutant until it looked like rotten green cheese. After soaking up enough lead to start its own scrapyard, the beast finally collapsed, twitching as the last bit of life drained away. Xiaoyong suggested that Brother Chung should eat the super mutant's corpse. Maybe consuming another rare mutant would give him another boost. Sure enough, the system rewarded Xiaoyong for removing such a dangerous threat, increasing his community score, and pushing his mission forward. Since they were already inside a supermarket that hadn't been completely stripped clean, there was no reason to leave empty-handed. Xiaoyong activated his storage ability and swept huge amounts of supplies straight into his dimensional inventory. No trucks, no heavy lifting, just free express shipping. Looking at the bodies left behind by the unlucky scavengers, Xiaoyong figured there was no point letting them reanimate into ordinary zombies later. Brother Chung had already finished the main course, so dessert was practically waiting for him. While Xiaoyong was busy looting, another group had started making moves. Boss Ru and several trusted subordinates followed the tire tracks left behind, quietly scouting the fortress from a distance. Her right-hand man observed that the settlement had a decent number of people, but didn't seem heavily armed. The only thing standing out was the sturdy warehouse-like fortress. Boss Ru couldn't understand how a place like this managed to wipe out Jiang Shang, Lin Guangkai, and the entire Bichu Mountain Villa crew. She convinced herself they must have used dirty tricks like luring zombie hordes to do the work. Drunk on confidence, she was already treating Xiaoyong's fortress like her future property. For now, she ordered everyone to head back, regroup, gather more weapons and manpower, then launch a surprise attack when the defenders least expected it. As their vehicles drove away, Xiaoyong's group happened to be heading back along the opposite road. Zhang Qi happily told everyone that the fortress even had proper beds and hot showers waiting for them. Passing another convoy on an empty apocalypse highway was rare enough to make everyone tense up. Neither side stopped, but for one brief moment Xiaoyong and Boss Ri silently measured each other through the passing windows. Right afterward, the system issued a brand new mission. Villain Nemesis Volume 1 had officially begun, and Xiaoyong's objective was simple: survive the coming invasion for a 50-point reward. His instincts immediately told him those suspicious vehicles belonged to the future attackers.